And we are live. Hip hip hooray. Thank you everyone for being a part of this. Thank you, Brittany. Thank you, Parker. Thank you, Terry Ann. This is the Sustainable Equity February 2017, whatever we want to call this, like powwow on some of these issues that have been going on since November. So I want to thank all of you for participating. If you guys want to, the first time you individually speak, if you want to say something about yourselves, that's great. Otherwise, I'll probably just add some stuff to the YouTube description box. I'm ready to get right into it. I think we should just go. And I think that before we go into any of the pre-planned questions and whatnot, I just want to give everybody a chance to say whatever they need to say about Beyonce, because, you know, first things first. So who would like to go first?
I mean, I'm happy for Beyonce so much. I loved her pregnancy announcement. I was not a fan of all of the criticism of her pregnancy announcement, but I've been trying to just ignore that. And I just saw the other day, I think it was a British star that was on the cover of a tabloid doing the exact same pregnancy announcement, like down to the clothes. And they were like, her Beyonce-inspired pregnancy announcement. I didn't see any articles about that, but that's all I'll say. Happy for Beyonce.
Could you just educate me on that? Because I'm sort of not aware of the criticisms of the pregnancy announcement.
So there is so she had her pregnancy announcement that was peak Beyonce. That was awesome. And then let me look up the title. There was an article on Man Repeller. It's like a fashion type blog, and it's feminist. And I can't find it right now, but someone wrote an article that was like, Beyonce made a pregnancy announcement, and that's great, but you know, she doesn't know whose feelings she's hurting. I think the lady had a miscarriage. She does not know Beyonce at all, but is like, Beyonce's happiness is stepping on other women, which was just terrible. And then there was another article in The Independent that was a mom that was saying, Beyonce, as a mother, I can tell you, like, this is not what pregnancy and motherhood look like. They're like, she's a mom of a child and she's about to have twins. She's a mom. I think she knows what motherhood looks like. It was just ridiculous. There was this very like faux feminist criticism of Beyonce, which, you know, I thought was stupid. I like had a hard pregnancy and would not be able to make a cute pregnancy announcement like that, but it's not offensive. It's cute. It's happy. She's happy. Like, let her be happy. I just think it's like the way people feel about Black moms in general, and like we're not allowed to be happy in our motherhood. Although that was dumb, but I'm happy for her, and I loved her Grammys performance. And I need to go put my pacifier in my baby's mouth. Hold on.
It sounds like a good time to turn it over to Terry Ann and Parker. Do you guys resonate with what Brittany is saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that people were like, I saw an article that was basically saying like, you know, we love Beyonce's photos, but they're just so tacky, and we're with it. And I was just like, the girl who wrote the article was like this 20-something white woman with like pink fake dreads talking about like these beautiful these like artisan pictures are tacky. So I don't know. I think that people love to criticize Beyonce for anything that she does. And I guess I can't be mad at him. I think, you know, criticism is the best form of flattery.
Terry Ann, would you like to bring in the maternal perspective?
Just, I really haven't given much thought to Beyonce's pregnancy, other than wondering if they use any kind of, if this is like a natural pregnancy, or if they use any kind of, what's it called?
The fertility drugs?
Yeah, like fertility. That's the only thing that I've been thinking about. But based on her performance at the Grammys, I just love the aesthetic that she's bringing to the table over the last year. I love the representation of Black women that she's bringing to the table. And I just love it all. I also have to shout out Solange, because she came through with like, she just took it to the next level with A Seat at the Table. So I'm loving both sisters right now.
Yeah, I think honestly, as far as like listening, as far as like the musicality, I prefer A Seat at the Table. I'm not gonna lie. I think Solange knocked it out.
I love the music.
Yes.
And the message.
Yes. Solange is like my icon. I love her.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree. Well, and I'll say I was very fortunate to have studied at William & Mary under a priestess of Oshun, who's the Yoruba goddess that Beyonce was embodying or channeling or whatever you want to call it. And so I like seeing a diversified, a more cultural diversification. And Beyonce's been doing that since I would say 4. Like she really got in touch with African culture more so and started bringing that more to the table. And I think that's just it, absolutely needed. And especially, I won't speak on behalf of African Americans, but I imagine that if I were African American, I'd feel even more emboldened by that, because it's like a restoration of culture and of roots that have been kind of lost, if that makes sense.
I agree.
I definitely feel like she's making me want to learn more about African culture, African traditions, the spiritual piece. I never thought about it until Lemonade.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, so there's so much good going on, and then I think all of us. Parker hasn't weighed in yet, but I know in the Facebook chat we all had similar opinions about this whole situation or controversy with Adele. So anyone who wants to speak about that, just jump in and go for it. Brittany, maybe?
I'll start. I didn't watch the Grammys live, but I saw Adele's speech the next day. And I really liked it. I love Adele. And I think she's very genuine. I think she's a really real person. And I was surprised, she's saying, oh, the way this album makes me feel, the way this makes my Black friends feel. And I was like, oh, good. This is what we say that we want allies to do, to understand when things are about us, so they can enjoy them. But it's ultimately about us. And I think that's what she did. I don't know really what people expected her to do. I kind of think, like I was saying in the message, that people really have ally fatigue. So they were saying, okay, look at this white woman trying to be down, and she's not. But I think that she said what she had to say. And in her backstage speech, I thought it was kind of funny that it was just all about Beyonce after the Grammys, and they go backstage and they do the whole speech. And she said, frankly, what the fuck does she have to do? Pardon, but that's what she said. To win
exactly what she said.
I mean, it's so true. And it's, like I said, that's what we say that we want allies to do. And I think she did that. I don't think there's anything wrong with what she did or said.
What about Mrs. and Mrs. Watts over here?
Yeah, I think that what she did was like just such a great example of what we want allies to do. As Brittany was saying, like, you don't have to go through all of this, but understanding and putting us on the platform so that we can speak about what our issues are more, and like calling attention to when you're gaining privilege because of your skin color or something like that. I think that was very, it showed me a side to Adele that I frankly hadn't, ever seen before.
Terry Ann, did you have anything to add?
I saw this article yesterday. I don't know if it was Ebony or Essence, but this person had this long list of things that Adele should have said. And I mean, just from a practical standpoint, I thought to myself, how many times do you get up, put on the spot, and you have to say something, and when it's over, you're like, oh, I should have said this, or I should have said that. And I thought what she said was perfect. And for Solange to be saying, this is for us. Basically, that is what Adele was saying. Like, it spoke to my Black friends. So we can't have it both ways, I feel. Either we're going to run around here saying, can we have anything? But then when someone else from another race says this was important to Black people, we can't say, well, she should have said more. I feel like what she said was good enough.
I'd like to add a little something here, because I've been with Adele since 21. Most people in the States caught on to Adele with 23. But I was like with her from 21. And so like Adele is woke as fuck and has been for a long time. She's from Brixton, which is like a very racially diverse, if not minority majority community in London. And actually, you know, all those albums, all these breakup albums were actually about a Black guy. Not that like, oh, she has, you know, she's with Black dudes and so blah, blah, blah. Obviously, people say stuff like that a lot. But what I'm saying is that she's been really, really internal, you know what I mean? She's been really in the community, you know, she's not fake about who she is, you know? And so like, of course she's married to a white guy now or whatever, but there's even interviews in the past where, you know, she kind of addresses that head on in terms of like her cultural immersion or whatever, because early on in her career, she was looked at as like another Amy Winehouse, who's a white person operating within a traditionally Black soul medium, you know? So she is real about it. She is legitimately woke. And what I haven't heard anyone express an opinion about, I agree that I'm down. I'm perfectly fine with what Adele said, but what I'm wondering is that how do we feel about the fact that she got the Grammy to begin with?
I think it was to be expected. I mean, it just seemed like there was no way it could get Album of the Year. But at the same time, I mean, you know, Adele came up with another album. Adele is very popular. Adele albums have sold like tens and tens of millions of copies. I think that if there was anyone, or I kind of thought they might give it to Sturgill Simpson just to be like, we did something different. But I mean, it's kind of, I mean, it's just not surprising. That's what the Grammys are. And I think we have this struggle as Americans to want the things that we want, like the Grammys are something of value, but Black people are excluded from them. So we're kind of like, okay, do we want to hold this as something of value, or do we want to walk away from it and create our own thing? Or why can't we all have the same things? I think it's very, I'm not really sure what I'm trying to say, but I think there is this like constant battle between wondering if we as people of color should recognize these things as having weight and value or not. But it was a slap in the face, but that's what they always do. It's not surprising. I don't really know how much longer anyone can really be upset about it, because that's what it is. That's what it has always been.
I agree that it was a slap in the face. I'm so surprised that Beyonce keeps showing up to perform at these award shows, and we tune in just to see her, and then she doesn't get the awards. I don't expect anything different. It would be nice though, for her to get the validation, especially after Lemonade. But again, as Solange said, she came out, I guess it was Monday or Sunday night, saying, you know, we have to stop looking to these institutions for validation. So yeah, I agree.
Do you have any thoughts, Parker?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Grammys as an institution are really facing this sort of questionability just because they've come out and said, you know, it's not about sales. It's not about how popular this album is, you know, a couple of years ago when she was against Beck. And, you know, I guess they have like an artistry. They have, you know, how artistic and how, you know, how musical an album is and how complex it is. And apparently Beck had a higher score. But when you look at Lemonade compared to 25, Beyonce scored, you know, I think it was at least 10 points higher than Adele. So we're really we know what it's about. And we know that she won because this was, you know, a white woman. But it's very interesting because, like you said, this is a white woman who's singing quote unquote Black music. Right.
And that in and of itself, I mean, you know, and I think Adele's operating with that awareness, you know, that she is performing in a Black medium, right. and that, you know, she acknowledges the debt of gratitude that she personally owes to Beyonce as her being an artist inspired directly by Beyonce. And so I think really my take on the Beck situation is that the Beck situation was restorative to the fact that Beck was ignored in a generation previous because he was pretty popular, but also too weird. But it's like, in this case, that did come at the expense in 2014 or whenever it was, that did come at the expense of Beyonce. And to me, that album, if the argument was that Adele's 25 had broader appeal. And that, I mean, that's, if you go by album sales, 25 did blow Lemonade out the water. We should keep that real. But that was partially due to the way Beyonce released Lemonade as live streaming and all that stuff. But if you look at that argument, like, to me, Beyonce, the self-titled album from late 2013 should have easily been an easy win, you know, because it had I think it had broader appeal because it did. It sold over twice as much as Lemonade did. And it wasn't, but of course, it's auteur theory, which is a theory that comes from cinema studies, that the further an artist goes in their career, the more they get themselves. And so the price of evolving as an artist and being truer to yourself is that you do drop off some of that mass appeal. But it's like you guys said, you know, when you look at how African Americans and African American women have contributed to music so consistently for, you know, since the dawn of American popular music, there's a reason for things to be slighted. And I don't know if any of you guys had a chance to read the screenshot that I sent out through the Facebook thing, but one of my big points is, like, what this really all goes back to, one of the bigger systemic issues here is who owns Black music. You know, you see Black artists who do not own their own music. And really, my answer from the intersectional perspective, and so I write songs and I would like to record an album someday. From my perspective, I would like to see the intersectional people who aren't part of the big system develop channels of distribution that rival the mainstream. Because, like, really, when you put that much power into those few hands, you know, it's kind of like you get all these social ills and you get this music that, in my opinion, some of it is utter garbage these days, some of what they play on the radio. And a lot of it is, and I'm sorry, Parker, if you're offended by that, since you're in that generation, but some of what concerns me from, like, the older perspective is that it's encouraging criminal activity, it's encouraging drug use, it's encouraging promiscuity and the side chick phenomenon and all that. There's a lot of destructive things that are being pushed through those channels that are having real social consequences, in my opinion, you know. So I'll shut up now, I'm sorry.
I think that's why you have to sort of respect Chance the Rapper and what he's done in terms of getting his music out and getting the recognition at the same time.
I agree. I love Chance.
Yeah, I think what he's doing is revolutionary, you know. And I guess that's because I think we're at, like, you know, the very beginning of digital music. When you sort of think about it, you know, people aren't making money off of records anymore. And I think that's why Chance is one of the first people who sort of realized, you know, I'm not making any money off of this $1.27 song. Most of it's going to my record label. So why not, you know, keep that for free and just let the people hear my music, and then they'll pay for a tour, which I know I've done multiple times. And I think people like to hear, you know, obviously Chance the Rapper has, like, who's like fuck bitches get money songs, but he also does have, like, you know, nice songs that are, like, just nice to listen to, you know. And I think that's what's been really cool and really revolutionary in this sort of era. 2016 was a very bad year, but it was a great year for artistry, I think.
2017, I think, is going to be even better, or it's headed that way, in my opinion. Brittany, did you have anything to say about Chance?
Oh, I was just going to say I love Chance. He's really a singular talent, and I listen to so many things, but I also listen to Migos. Like, I listen to all the most terrible music possible, and I love it. But the problem is, you know, I, as an adult, can, like, put the music in perspective. And like you're saying, like, children can't really. And then there's such a saturation of that type of music and not of any other types of music. So Black music is represented in such a narrow way. And then it also feels back to the Grammys, like, you know, Black people contribute so much to music, and then it's copied by white people and, like, watered down. And then you have the Grammys, which just kind of seems like this thing to be like, no, white people are good at music. Like, watch us win against all these Black people whose music is better or that we stole from.
Right. Well, that's what do you guys think about my emphasis on ownership? You know, like, why can't we have it all? You know, why can't we have it to where artists are owning what they're doing? Why do we even need a middleman? You know,
you don't. And I wonder, I'm not really sure, but I wonder if that was what Jay-Z's point, the point that Jay-Z was trying to make with Tidal. I don't think people really took it that way, I guess because he's so wealthy, but I wonder if that seemed kind of the point that he was making, you know, owning your own things and getting paid for what you do rather than paying an executive. I guess a lot of people is that he's an executive. And I feel like if Spotify can exist, why not Tidal? But I think that's what the system is going toward now, artists owning more of their music. And they should. And I think that's the point Frank Ocean was making as well. He wrote an open letter to the Grammys. It was saying that he put back all of his masters and is not submitting his music for a Grammys consideration. And I wonder what would happen if Beyonce didn't submit her music for consideration and didn't perform, to Terry's point, didn't show up. You know, I wonder what that would mean for the Grammys as an institution and if they would be forced to change and forced to get with the times.
I think I definitely think, you know, as Black people, we need to sort of step away from that idea of like going to these events when we're not being recognized. But it seems like at this point, Black celebrities are only willing to do that, you know, when it's their name on the line, right? So you saw Will Smith refuse to go to the Oscars because he didn't get a nomination. But what about next year when he doesn't have a movie out, but he sees that no Black people, you know, are nominated? Is that still going to be an issue? So I think we need more unity on the front because, you know, it can't just be your neck that's on the line, you know?
Right. Yeah. One thing that about Tidal is that you know, Universal Records forbade all their artists for making single streaming deals like what people were doing through Tidal. So I think Jay-Z was attempting to do that, and yeah, I had an eye roll moment too because it's like, well, all of you people are already sitting on at least 8 figures anyway, but it's like at the same time, Universal Records had the authority to say, no, you cannot, or you can, but you cannot also have this deal, this distribution with us, which is the source of all of your wealth and privilege anyway. So like, that's a huge point. That's why for me, it all boils down to me, the walkout or the solidarity is walk out of all these contracts and say, no, we're going to make the alternative underground the new mainstream and watch and just kind of laugh while all you rich people fail, you know?
And that's why I think that it was so funny when Chance was accepting his award and he was like, shout out to SoundCloud. And they started playing music. They were like, it's time to get him off stage because I mean, he's basically figured it out.
Yeah. Well, and they do, you know, and people the conspiracy theories about Prince and Michael is like, oh, the record industry had them killed because they were trying to own their own stuff or whatever, you know, and I take anything where like, it's like people just making these big ass YouTube videos. I take all that with a grain of salt. I'm not endorsing those theories. But it's like, there's something to be said for that. There's something to be said that the system obviously sees it as a threat. They obviously know that this is a white majority owned industry. And depending on how you classify like ethnic Jewish people, I don't know who considers them white and who considers them not white. But it's a critical mass. I'm not trying to be, you know, like that. But I'm just saying it's like white. It's either white or white plus Jewish.
We were just having a debate the other night about are Jewish people white? So it's just funny that you brought that up.
White nationalists say no. I think behind closed doors, a lot of Jewish people also say no. But like officially, yes, I guess. Like the mainstream says, like, you know, like it's, I don't know, whatever. But like it's like who goes, I mean, it's so arbitrary who gets included within whiteness anyway, right? But practically. But yeah, so that to me, I agree. It's like people are getting woke to all that stuff, and I think there's really nothing to it but to do it. And unfortunately, while we're so fixated on that top tier, you know, on the Beyoncés and whatnot, it's like it's really boils down to what decisions do those specific people make, you know, and that's problematic in and of itself. Because just keeping it real, it's not that Beyonce isn't everything, it isn't amazing, but if you really go deep in the underground, you're going to find people with more talent. I mean, not trying to be shady. I'm just saying, like, there are some people who are incredibly gifted vocalists, incredibly gifted dancers, incredibly gifted lyricists, and have the music ingenuity as well. You know what I'm saying? So like, of course she's great, but part of why she's so great and so revered is the platform, you know? So I'm ready to move on. Does anyone have anything else to say about Beyonce?
I don't have anything else to say about Beyonce, but in terms of like the commerciality of Black music, the last thing I want to say is that watching the Super Bowl, when Ford used that Nina Simone song, I was just like, this is disgusting. This is absolutely disgusting. I can't stand it. One more corporation using her music to sell cars.
Yeah.
So that's the last thing I'll say.
I had forgotten. I think I blocked that out. In the moment, I was like, this is ridiculous. And then I completely...
I've come across the commercial since then. I don't watch the Super Bowl, but I know what commercial we're talking about. What were you saying, Brittany? I'm sorry.
No, I was saying I remember watching the Super Bowl and seeing that and being like, is this Nina Simone? What is happening? And then I just kind of blocked it out. It's just too much.
Well, and I couldn't like... I could not cope last year when they got that Puerto Rican woman to play her, you know, and she was in blackface, you know, like I couldn't cope. I did boycott that movie.
Me too.
So, Nina Simone is my Beyonce and forever will be, you know, like Nina Simone is my number one, period. And I couldn't cope.
It's awful what they've done, tried to do to her legacy, what they've tried to do. I didn't watch the movie either. It was awful. And her family was against it, so I wouldn't watch anything her family was against it anyway. But it was just, I saw the trailer and it was really shocking and really upsetting.
Yes. I mean, and it wasn't like, I mean, with the makeup technology that they have, I mean, they shouldn't have been doing blackface on anybody anyway. I mean, like you can find a woman of Nina Simone's complexion and of her ethnic identity to you know what I mean? You can find you can find a Black woman to do this. You know what I'm saying? Like it's almost, I don't know, what's her name? Was it Zoe something? The Star Trek girl.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, I know she's like Puerto Rican and has African heritage as well. So I'm not trying to define her identity for her, but like you could have found someone more appropriate.
Yes, fully agree. And I think she had made comments as well about her Black identity that maybe weren't the best in the past. So I think that kind of added insult to injury, or just comments. And I don't even remember, to be honest. But I think there was a lot of criticism of her trying to downplay her Afro-Latina identity, or the Afro part of her Afro-Latina identity. So
yeah,
but yeah, that was it was awful. Yeah, I don't have anything else to say about Beyonce. I'm done.
And anything on you guys' end, Parker and Terry Ann, before we move on to the other questions?
Nope, we're good.
All right, that was good for the music industry related questions. So Brittany and I, you guys all know, Brittany and I did a talk last year where we addressed a lot of issues within, back when the world was honestly entirely different than it is now. So much has changed. I was looking back at that, the presentation, I was like, oh my, we were so young and innocent last year. Last February, we were so young and innocent. So I wanted to follow up because we raised some good topics that have changed. And so I phrased these questions toward Brittany, but I want everyone to weigh in on them as well. And one thing, Brittany, that you said is that, I don't remember your exact wording, but it was something to the effect of, my views are probably more in line with Bernie, but you felt that Clinton would get in there and that she would play dirty and that she would be able to make, smaller incremental changes and would probably win because of her capacity to be very focused and cunning and whatnot. So knowing what we all know now, since you had said, and of course this is true of me, although I had forgotten that as of February, I had not committed to being a Bernie bro at that time. But later on, I did commit to being a Bernie bro. But knowing what we all know now, do you sort of reconceptualize how you would have approached the 2016 election in terms of which nominee you would have supported before the DNC did their thing?
You know, I don't know about that in particular. I'm not, my views are still probably more close aligned with Bernie, but I always am kind of like, about him. Not that I'm any more like rah-rah about Hillary, but I would say currently, like his comments on Jeff Sessions have really made me upset. And not made me upset, but I don't like them. And just with him and the issues of race, I've always felt kind of like, if he's going to say that he's revolutionary, I just am kind of expecting more. And I don't know if that's fair to him, but I think that the use of that term has made me expect more. So it's made me less likely to be like, okay, yeah, Bernie Sanders, because I'm like, okay, where's the revolution, buddy? Like, if you're gonna be revolutionary, like, do it, and like, we'll be here. But don't say that you are when you are not, when you are still establishment, maybe more left establishment, rightfully so. But, you know, I also try to give him credit where credit's due. He does bring up things that people don't bring up. And I think, as you were saying in your notes on our outline, you could see Hillary's platform change in real time to move toward him. So he was onto something that she was not onto. I don't necessarily know if he would have won still. I just don't see this country voting for like an old Jewish atheist man, socialist. Like, I just don't see it. But I do think that I do realize definitely more now that the DNC made a misstep with Hillary. And I think it was very much like, okay, well, she didn't win in 2008 and we're over it, but it's her time now. And I think that was a mistake. And I think they should have definitely had someone younger and more tapped into the problems of the upcoming generations. I mean, I had no idea that Trump was going to win. Jesus Christ. I just had no, you know, I thought, and I think I said this on Facebook, you know, I consider myself pretty cynical. And I thought, you know, this country has done a lot of terrible things. You know, I'm scared they're going to vote for Trump, but we're not really going to elect Trump, are we? Compared to Hillary. I mean, even if you don't like her, she's qualified. Like, I don't think that Trump can get through a day, and as we've seen, and like be on the phone with people and be normal. Like, at the very least, she can do that, and she won't she won't nuke someone or something. But you know, I don't know. I think this has all been very surprising. I don't know if I would have changed my choice, but I do definitely agree, or with the Bernie Bros now, that a different candidate should have been chosen. Not necessarily Sanders, but just a completely different one.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, I would. Yeah, maybe I could buy that. I think the millennials, we are the ascendant generation now. Terry-Ann, do you identify as a Gen Xer?
No.
What are you? What are you?
I don't know. I'm almost 50. So what is that?
That would be, technically that's Gen X.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the upper end. It's the upper end of. It's the like. It's really the cusp, honestly. But like my parents were born in '63 and '62, and Kennedy was assassinated right around that time. So like they demarcated by Kennedy's assassination, much as they conceptualized millennials by 9/11. By how old were you during 9/11?
Me?
No. I mean, like how, but millennials, if you were aware, you know, if you were aware while 9/11 was happening, then you're a millennial, you know, of that, and below the Gen X line, you know. So like a good hard and fast demarcation line for millennials is like 1980, 1981. So
okay.
But by what has been coalescing, I mean, there's so many generational taxonomists are diversified in their views, but like I'm speaking to, I research this issue very widely because I'm becoming a generational radical, quite frankly. But with the median opinions are what I'm describing. The most mainstream, the opinions are coalescing around what I'm describing. But so what the way I see it is that millennials we're redefining what is viable. You know, like the concept that Hillary Clinton was more viable is very much a prior to us concept, you know, and so, but we know now, you know, and even I was among them as well. Brittany and I, you and I both thought Hillary was going to take it, last year. And so like, because we were coming at that from a jaded perspective, we're like, oh, well, the world sucks, so Hillary Clinton's going to take it. You know what I mean? But now what's happening is that, like, what the election of Donald Trump does show us is that what's possible, like, possibilities are expanded. And if possibilities can go in the extreme in that direction, we can take them in the extreme in this direction too, because the key point to Donald Trump's success, in my opinion, was the economic progressive message, which of course, I don't think he's going to deliver on that in any real or sustainable way. But that's, it's a new paradigm in terms of which message is going to resonate. So the same sort of a different modification of the question for Parker and for Terry Ann. Parker, you're beneath voting age, right?
I'll be voting age in 2 years, so
you're preparing now.
Yeah.
Building that base of knowledge, awesome. That's what we love to see. So what are you guys, where did you guys fall on the Bernie versus Hillary question?
I think we were both pro Bernie, but I worked the Hillary Clinton campaign, and I wasn't mad at what she was saying. I didn't think that there was going to be any radical change. I thought at the worst it was going to be a third Obama term. I didn't think that she was as bad as people made her out to be. People like to say, she's impersonable, she's a robot. Her job wasn't to, sit down and make you cookies and read you a bedtime story. Her job was to get out here and be president of the United States. And I think, honestly, a lot of that had to do with the fact that she was a woman. And you said, Trump's message of economic prosperity. A lot of the underlying message with his message of economic prosperity was, let's get economic prosperity by kicking out the Muslims and the Mexicans who are taking our jobs. So to your question about, do you think Sanders would have won? I have to question that, just because so much of what pushed Trump was this xenophobic, Islamophobic, racist rhetoric that pulled people who hadn't voted in years out of the House to vote. Well,
it's complicated when we think about Hillary actually winning the popular vote. So like I'm not sure I totally agree that Trump produced more voters. And we do have to look at a lot of those counties where Trump took the Obama voters, so, I mean, I would assume the average person who voted for Obama and then voted for Trump cares more about the economic message than they do about the racial stuff. But I will say I've been researching the alt-right more deeply than I had been before. I really didn't think it was a real thing, honestly. I thought it was just something people would talk about. And I saw Milo Yiannopoulos and I was like, this is a marketing ploy, this alt-right concept. But when you look into it, it's real, and they are racial radicals. So I will say that if there was a demographic that has now been produced that is more racist and votes along racist lines, it's within the millennial generation. Most of them are younger than Brittany and myself, but like most of them are younger than the late 20s, early 30s demographic, and they're growing, and it's very terrifying. But anyway, I'm sorry. I don't think, maybe I cut you off. Was there something else that you had to say there?
No.
I mean, I was a Bernie supporter from the very beginning. I voted for Bernie in the primary. I was a reluctant Hillary supporter all along. Up until the convention, I thought they put on a great convention. I thought they rolled her out very well. I gained more insight to who she was as a person and what the total sum of her career had been. But I saw Parker switch the moment that Hillary got that nomination. She went out there and she pounded the pavement all summer for Hillary, registering voters, which is what I think as a Democrat we all want. We all want to coalesce around the person who we think is can beat someone like Donald Trump. But whether or not Bernie could have won, I mean, I think there were just so many things going on with this election. Would Jill Stein and what was his name?
Gary Johnson.
Would they have gotten the votes they got if Bernie was in the election? Could that have flipped it?
I will say I voted for Jill Stein and I wanted to vote for Bernie Sanders, and I would have voted for Bernie Sanders I would have voted for a Clinton Sanders ticket as well. But I'm sorry.
So I really just wonder if Bernie, the next day I was like, damn, could Bernie have won, after Trump won? Mm-hmm. Because maybe these people who voted for these third party people would not have done so if Bernie was in the election. In terms of her getting the popular vote, I mean, I have to assume, I don't know the numbers, but I have to assume that those 3 million votes came from safe Democrat states. And the states that Democrats need to really represent Trump's message resonated. So Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Florida. I mean, if Democrats can't win those anymore, we can't win. So I don't think the 3 million in the popular vote that she won more than him comes from, it comes from places that we're going to win. And then the third thing that I think worked against Hillary was, first of all, this Russian influence that now they're saying played a role. And then the FBI director coming out like weeks before the election saying this stuff about her email. I'm just like, everything just converged against her. So it's Bernie, it's Jill Stein, it's Gary Johnson, it's the Russians.
They're all after us.
It's like, it was a perfect storm. But the last thing I'll say is Danielle Allen during the primaries, like right around the Virginia primary, she basically came out and said, Democrats need to vote for Rubio. Like, prevent Trump from getting the nomination. And in
open primary states.
In retrospect, I'm just like, that may have been like the most brilliant thing that could have been done, because everyone was like, he can't win. But it was like a perfect storm.
Yeah, Brittany's been sitting on that comment for a minute. Give it to his girlfriend.
Oh, sorry, I was typing away. I have a friend who voted for Rubio. He's a Democrat, but he went to the Republican primary and voted for Rubio. The thing that Terry was saying about the 3 million votes, I think that a huge thing we saw, which Democrats should have figured this out or seen this coming with Gore, is that the electoral college, like basically the history of the electoral college and why the electoral votes are the way that they are, and the fact that they're not population proportional, which I didn't realize that it was so far off. So I think a lot of people, myself included, I was very smug and very cocky about the demographics and thinking, that's a demographic shift. But because of the electoral college, it's going to take a lot more of a demographic shift for these Black and brown votes, these minority votes, to count and swing an election. I mean,
especially.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Will you finish your idea first, please? I'm sorry.
No, that was basically it. I think that, what we saw is that, like, embedded in the system of this country is just conservatism that leans toward favoring conservative white males or the conservative white establishment. I guess it's all the conservative white establishment, but the more conservative white establishment. Because I mean, that's what a lot of people were saying. Oh, the demographic shift, of course, more minorities are going to vote for Clinton. And we did, but the way that our election system is set up, it's going to take a lot more of us to kind of turn.
Right. And what I was going to add was that, and especially, and I'm not one of those people. It's like, did people, undocumented people, did they vote or did they not vote? Maybe in some instances they did, maybe in some instances they didn't. But the bare bones bottom line is that there will be less people of color, there will be less minorities here who, whether they're on a path to citizenship or not, certainly influence the popular will.
Yeah.
So let's see. I'm gonna skip some of these questions because I'm realizing how much what the time factor has been. I did want to ask you, Brittany, because we had no idea that you were going to. Well, maybe you had an idea. Maybe it was in the back of your head as far as when you wanted to have James. But last year we tackled the idea of parenting head on, in terms of in the specific context of the Black Lives Matter movement and all the the violence against young men of color and young people of color in general. So now it's a real thing. Now you actually are raising a black son, a biracial son. And so how have things changed for you? Like what are your thoughts there?
Well, yeah, we did know that we were planning on starting our family very soon. So it was so hard not to spill the beans. But yeah, I had always had concerns about state violence and the extrajudicial killings by police and our country's seeming history of killing young Black boys. I mean, every time I look at this picture, I think of Emmett Till. They look just alike to me. And, I really, sorry.
Wow. Oh, I'm sorry.
And, I was already worried about what life would be like for my children. And I think that I had tried to, you kind of try to plan ahead and say, okay, if they come to me talking about this, I'll say this and I'll do this. But the level of terror that I feel now is much more real because I have an actual child and because Trump is president, because Jeff Sessions is attorney general. I mean, that's what I was really afraid of when voting and when Trump became president. I said, who's going to be attorney general? What are they going to do when police kill someone? They're not going to have a civil rights investigation. Is Trump going to make a speech? Is Trump going to reach out to a Black family whose child is killed by the police, or the family of someone's father is killed by the police, someone's mother is killed by the police? No, he's not going to do that. And he came out with this executive order saying that he is going to aggressively prosecute people who commit violence against police. I mean, what's going to happen to Black Lives Matter? What's going to happen to all of those things? And I think, it was already a very precarious, terrible situation for Black people living in this country. And now it's going to go to levels that at least my generation hasn't seen. I think that's very frightening. And I think, having a son, I hear a lot of people that I'm friends with talk about, how we live in the bubble and it's going to be fine. I live in Alexandria. I live in a nice neighborhood. I live in a good school district, but, we're still Black. So it's hard to hear people kind of say that to reassure me and say, oh, you're going to be fine. And I'm like, we're still Black though. And Trump is the president and Jeff Sessions is the attorney general. So it's very frightening.
Right, and you guys have the option with Ricky's citizenship, to expat, and you had said last year we addressed this, and you had said that Ricky was the one who was less in favor of expatting because he's like, oh, there are so many. Well, you had represented your both opinion that the class issues are a bit tougher in Britain, but the racial issues. This has arguably changed now since Brexit. Again, we were so innocent last year, but like, what is that a thought? Is that more of a thought? And has Ricky changed his mind? That's something that I'd like to know.
Well, we talked about moving. Honestly, when I can't remember what county it was that Hillary lost in Florida the night of the election, I was like, you need to start looking for jobs in the UK right now because we don't know what's about to happen. But I think for Ricky, his opinion is still, with the rising white nationalist movement in the UK, that US can recover better than the UK can. And I was talking to him about this today, and he was saying that Americans have a bit more fight, and Britain is, keep calm and carry on. And he says that he thinks from his cultural upbringing that they're more likely to accept the way that things are rather than change them. But, we talked about moving, and I've had conversations with other people in my life about moving that have been a bit tense. So I try to talk about it very openly, but I'm talking about it now because it is a privilege to be able to leave. It definitely is. A lot of people cannot leave, but I have a son, and I bristle at being told as a Black mother that it's a privilege for me to have to flee a country because I'm scared of what's going to happen to my child. So, leaving, it's not like we would leave and we would have a job and a house and he has family there, but it's not like we can just leave and transplant our life. So it definitely is a privilege, but it's a lot to think about. And, we talked about what it would take for us to leave. And hopefully if we had to leave, it would be temporary and we would be able to come back. So for now, we're here. I don't really think that people of color have an obligation to stay and try to fix a country that's trying to persecute them. But I think we want to stay here and we want to see how it goes. And, we want to be here. Our family, my family's here. His family, half of his family is here half the time. And, we'd rather not leave. But if it came down to it, if it came down to it for James, we would leave. There would just be no choice. We would have to.
Arguably, the only historically white nation where white nationalism isn't on the rise is Russia, where it was already huge.
Yes.
So yeah, as far as if you're looking to expat, it's more in the direction maybe Latin America or somewhere else or maybe even South Africa. White nationalism is on the rise in South Africa.
Yeah, and Canada would be still close.
Canada.
That would be probably the best option. They treat their native people terribly. People say, "Oh, Canada's wonderful," but they have their things as well. But I'm hoping we don't have to go. But it's still definitely something. We never, with the way things are going with the Trump presidency and they're moving so quickly, you just never know.
Well, yeah, and then Canada just had that mosque that got shut up by white nationalists. So. What about you, Terry Ann? You're also a Black mother of. How many children do you have, Terry Ann?
I have two girls, 16 and 14.
Okay.
So for me, I don't even know what to say. I think that having girls is a little bit different. Like the level of fear, I think, is probably less than if I had boys. But at the same time, I know that Black bodies are at risk, no matter what your gender is. So, I think that we're just more aware of it now. Honestly, when I had children, this wasn't something that I thought about. Like, I felt like we live in a great zip code. My kids will have better opportunities than I do. They'll be able to go to a good school, go to college, and just do better than I did. But now, I don't know if it's because it's just more visible, but you're just constantly thinking about what can happen to your kids when they're not with you. Parker drives now. And so it's just like whenever she's not with us, you're constantly thinking like, where is she? Did she make it to school? Did she make it home? And even when I'm with my husband, one day the police were at Wawa and his tags were dead. And me and the girls were going into Wawa just to like get some snacks, whatever. And when I walked in, it's a shame that I thought to myself, like, I could come out and he could be dead. Like, just because the police approached him and were like, your tags are dead. So it's just a constant, worry that something could happen and it's just out of your hands. And I tell my children, I know that I have smart kids and they know their rights, but you have to tell your kids, like, sometimes you just have to be quiet. So
that's deep.
Tough.
Parker, I'm sorry. Wait, I'm sorry, Terry. What were you saying?
I was just saying it's tough.
Parker, do you have anything to add? Being the new driver, the one who's coming of age?
I don't go to school with many Black kids, so it's definitely not ever something that's on my mind. But I know that, like, when I see the police, it's just like, like, even if I'm driving below the speed limit, it's drive 10 miles less just because I, you know, don't want anything. I know a lot of my friends, like, you know, we're at the age where a lot of my friends drink and do these things. And to them, you know, it's a slap on the wrist. But to me, honestly, like, it would be, you know, the end of what I want to do and the end of my life as I see it, because I don't have that privilege of going out and, like, not having fun, but, you know, going out and being rowdy and being like a teen, quote unquote, like the rest of the kids that I grew up with.
Yeah, cool.
And it is sad that for so many Black teens, they're sort of raised with this idea that you can't make the mistakes that other kids can make, because it can basically change your entire life. So
that's real, and that's not just in the current age bracket. You know, like I remember, you know, we without tattling on myself too much, you know, I may or may not have engaged in certain petty transactional activities involving plants that grow and are considered not legal for being growing. And anyway, and I remember meeting up with a friend of mine whom I've known since I was 6. I mean, we were in, you know, we went to all these schools together all the way through. We graduated the same year, the same high school and whatnot. But I went the college route to this predominantly white town, and he went in another route with his life. He moved to Maryland in a more minority-centered context, and we were doing the same, participating in the same illegal activity. And I had no consequence. I had no fear of consequence. He ended up serving jail time. Like, I think it was like 2 years or something like that. And it's just, I just remember just thinking, man, that's just so fucked up. You know what I mean? Like, that's, you know, like, just seeing how, because to me, it was just all like, oh my God, easy money. I'm having fun. Like, this is just me being this privileged little dense white kid. And, like, you know what I'm saying? But, like, it's exactly what you said. For my friend, whom I've known forever, like, it was a whole different thing. And that's just what's real, you know, and what should not be, especially with that particular activity. I mean, Jesus. So I was going to move on to Donald Trump and the beginnings of the administration. Does anyone else want to say anything about this topic before we move on?
Nope.
Everybody good? Yeah. Okay, so I guess getting right into it, we've already started to touch on it, but I did have the question out here, like, how do we explain the Donald Trump phenomenon? Do we think of it as a white lash? Do we think of it as sexism? Is this kind of like a symbolic class warfare situation where the underclass is communicating to the privileged class that we're coming for you? Is this business as usual? Like, this is really just another Republican who just happens to have been more offensive and less articulate than usual? Is it all of the above? Like, how would we think that we would get here? And Brittany, I don't know if you're attending to James or not, but I'd like to start with you because you're really kind of the expert among us. You know, you're the most politically astute, I would say, in terms of your course of study.
What? Thank you. Well, let's see, what did I write? Well, I think personally that it's white privilege reasserting itself. Kind of a, what did they call it? Oh, the Larry Wilmore show. They called it the Black Lash. The
white lash?
The black, or yeah, or like to the backlash to the Black president. And honestly, I talked to my husband a lot about this, and we go back and forth on whether or not it's white privilege reasserting itself or it's the last dying gasp of white privilege. I tend to think that it's the former. I'm hoping it's the latter, but I tend to think it's the former. I think depending on what day it is, we both think different things. But, you know, I think we had the Obama presidency. And I think a lot of people were really mad. And I think a lot of people looking to their head of state and seeing a Black man married to a Black woman with Black kids in the White House were like, this is not how it's going to be. Like, we need to go back to what we were doing. And I think sexism was a part of it as well. You know, I think Hillary Clinton was one of the most qualified people to run for president. Her qualifications were seen as detrimental and seen, you know, she was too much of an insider. Her wealth was seen as a problem as well. You know, Donald Trump had no qualifications whatsoever, and that was seen as fine when it wasn't with Obama. And his wealth was seen as an asset, and Hillary's was not.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was a bit of sexism. And the whole thing about her being not trustworthy when there's like 40 years of documentation of Donald Trump like skirting the law and like not being trustworthy. So definitely there was a double standard, and there was a kind of like, I would always get frustrated when Trump would do stupid things and people would be like, no, he's going to pivot, he's going to be presidential. And I feel like people saw this white man in a suit that was rich, and they were like, whatever he did, they were like, no, he's playing 10-dimensional chess. He's really intelligent. He knows what he's doing. Like, he's playing us all. And I'm like, he's an idiot. Like, come on. But I think that after Obama, I think that a large segment of this country kind of just felt like it was time to go back to what we had been doing before, and like we were fine with that, and that's what we need to go back to. Let me see the rest of my notes. Yeah, and I think that also with the Republicans, they do something very smart. A lot of them are very wealthy, but they are very successful at pitting poor whites against poor blacks, poor minorities, and saying it's their fault. It's the black people's fault. It's minorities' fault. It's Mexicans' fault. Hispanic people's fault that you're not getting where you want to get. And I think this country has a myth that we're this classless society, and that it's, you know, it's a harder sell to say, no, it's these rich people like turning us all against each other, and instead we're saying, no, it's a black person, it's a Mexican person. I mean, that's kind of what Fred Hampton was getting at before he was assassinated, that, you know, poor people need to bond, like come together, and it's really like, this class needs to come together and we'll have more power together. But you know, the Republicans are very successful at dividing based on these lines. I don't remember who said it, but someone said that poor people in America think that they're temporarily embarrassed millionaires, and that they can attain this wealth just if you can get people out of the way. And I think Trump really appealed to that. So I think there's a lot of things, but I think it's just the nature of this country, just kind of reverting to just responding to the bit of progress that we had made.
Significantly, Dr. King was assassinated before he was able to do his Poor People's March as well. That is the radical message that is continually destroyed by any means necessary by the more clandestine, less prurient forces of history, shall we say, white supremacy, if we want to speak euphemistically. What about you guys, Terry Ann and Parker? How do you guys feel about the whitelash question, and about, like, you know, how did Trump build his power?
Well, to Brittany's point, I'm reading the new Jim Crow right now.
By Michelle Alexander, shout out.
Yeah, and like as you know, one of the like really interesting points that she makes is the way that racism and the, you know, racial caste system has worked was by pitting poor whites against black people, whether that be through the creation of slavery and putting indentured servants against African slaves, or if it be the populist movement with social reforms, pitting black people against working white people. And I think we've got to wake up, and I think it's mainly on white people, but the idea of the Republican Party is to have poor working white folks act without outside of their self-interest to hold on to this idea of superiority. You know, it's I think that they, you know, feel better that they're getting kicked in the stomach because at least, you know, they're not black while getting kicked. But to the point of, you know, how Trump got elected, I think, you know, this started with the Tea Party. The Republicans, no matter how much they hate Donald Trump, they're the ones who set the stage for him. They're the ones who put out this rhetoric. They're the ones who set up these ideas. They're the ones who set the stage for him. And then he just came in, and they acted surprised when he came out. But there was no surprise that after they pushed all of these ideas and this rhetoric, there was no surprise that Donald Trump could come in and take their voters away.
But I would like to interject two things before I ask Terry Ann to weigh in. One, since you are our scholar, our budding scholar who's coming up in the world, also look into Jessica Gordon Nempart's book, Collective Courage, because she talks about cooperatives and how Black-owned cooperative businesses and particularly interracial cooperative movements, cooperative economic movements, were a specific target of the Jim Crow legislation and all that stuff as well. A similar message to Michelle Alexander's when you're talking about that period, the Gilded Age, the Reformation period, post whatever, or turn of the century. But more focused on the side of the cooperatives that were developing and why those were such a threat. And the other thing is, I'm not going to belabor this point here because I'm going to make a separate video about this. That's just me. It's just going to be me giving a little lecture. But I would take it a step further and say, I think when you take the whole thing into account of how Donald Trump positioned himself as the voice of the birther movement, appealing to the Tea Party that whole time, and I'll present some more evidence when I do my lecture from comments that Kellyanne Conway's made about how she used to live in a building owned by Donald Trump and what relationship they've had in the long-term scope. I actually think that the Republicans pulled a fast one. I don't think Trump was actually ever an outsider candidate, quote unquote. I think that certain top tier people read their scripts very well. And that because Kellyanne keeps talking about how all her polls for decades have shown that the voter base wanted an outsider candidate. You know, I think that what has happened is that, yeah, Trump isn't the brightest bulb in the chandelier, but the people who are behind him, who I see more as an American alliance there than having anything necessarily to do with Russia, although obviously there's obviously, we know that there's more communication there and that there's more an alliance developing between the American power elites and the Russian power elites now, obviously. But I think that anyway, like I said, I'll make the point in another video, but I just wanted to add that in there, that I think it's more than just the Republicans don't like Trump. I think the Republicans, if you hear about like negging in terms of like pickup artistry, you know, like you sort of like get in the female's head and like, oh, I don't really need you, you know, blah, 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 to make her want you more, you know, very sexist, but it's like, that's the term. I think the Republicans negged Donald Trump to make us want him more, if that makes sense, you know. But anyway, did you have more, Parker, or Terry Ann, did you want to weigh in on this?
I mean, I guess I'll just sort of agree with what Parker said about the fact that over the last 8 years, the way that the Republican Party just sort of vilified and demonized Barack Obama, I think set the stage for Trump to swoop in. I mean, I think that they've done a good job of sort of like making like the liberal elite or people who have, you know, Ivy League education, like they've made being smart a bad thing. They've made like being an intellectual a bad thing. They've made people like wrap themselves up in the Constitution, but then people don't even understand the Constitution. I mean, I just feel like there's so much like miseducation and ignorance that has just allowed this to just brew. But I think I can't explain. I really can't explain. I'm still confused. So I'll go with whatever you guys said led to this.
Parker, I see the idea bubbling up in your head. Please
I mean,
give
like,
it to
I
us.
know that I'm always just like, I still don't understand how we got here. But what I will say is like, what's scary and what we definitely have to like look out for is we've made facts, just plain old facts, the villain in this, you know, it's just crazy to me to see Donald Trump come out and say the real opposition isn't the Democrats, it's the media. And you know, I was very hesitant to call him a fascist. I didn't want to be, you know, I didn't want to hype things up, but this looks a lot like fascism in the way that the facts are no longer facts. And the fact that they can paint anything as a lie or anything that they say as the truth is very disconcerting to me.
Brittany, do you have anything to add to that?
I agree with Parker on the fascism comment. You know, people say things like that, and I'm always like, guys, we live in America. I brag on this country like there's not that. But, you know, the way that he is, the way his relationship to facts, the way that he has his like own security force, and it's not really the Secret Service, like the things he does. I mean, it's very frightening. And to Parker's point again about his relationship with facts, I think, and about how being smart is not valued. I really feel that education and knowledge was reserved for the elite and reserved really for white men. And now that, you know, more people are going to college, more people have access to education, more people have access to facts. Now facts don't matter, and education is no longer, it's kind of a negative thing now, and being knowledgeable is a negative thing. I think that now that everyone has access to information, they're trying to discredit information. And I have an example that I feel like gives me a good in on what's going on. So Ricky and I know a person who voted for Trump. This person is trans. This person has a partner who is on disability benefits and voted for Trump because they said, I'm white first. And I want to preserve the value of, you know, I want to preserve my rights as a white person. So even knowing, okay, you're going to lose all of these things, the person you love is going to lose all of these things. Your whiteness is still so important to you, and that's what Trump appealed to. So it doesn't matter if Hillary has 20-point policy papers or that she's going to do this, or Trump is part of a party that persecutes LGBT people. You know, I'm white first is exactly what the person said. So I think that provides some insight to why people voted for Trump, where you'd be like, why did they vote for Trump? And maybe we'll get to the point later why a lot of women voted for Trump, white women voted for Trump. But I think that white identity and preservation of white identity, I think Trump really reached to that and really spoke to a lot of people about that, which allowed him to win. And your point about Kellyanne is true. Kellyanne is smart. I'm not a fan of her. She's the scariest one in that whole thing.
She is, yeah. She's in very real ways. I mean, and that's the leftist media is really denigrating her right now and trying to make this thesis that she's out of the loop because her story's changed so much. But no, I think she's HBIC there in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
I think time's gonna tell with Kellyanne.
Yeah,
I cannot make a definitive statement about, you know, what her status is in the White House. Initially, I was like, this woman is brilliant. But it looks like it's taken a toll on her. I mean, every day she is looking more and more like just cannot take anymore. So I don't know if that's just like, I can't take this place, or I don't know what it is, but I'm still, the jury is still out for me on her. I think her communication skills are top notch, but Matt Lauer sort of shut her down. Like, I've never seen her stop talking, and he shut her down. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm going to have to wait and see what's going on with her.
I do think she's brilliant, but I also think, for bringing in my mental health awareness, like, I think she's hypervigilant. Like, she has this, she's a hypervigilant narcissist, as is Hillary Clinton, by the way. And so what that means is that, like, their locus of self-fixation, like a traditional narcissist are the people who take way too many selfies, you know, so, like, you know, their locus of self-obsession is like this, all this, you know. I'm a reformed traditional narcissist. I was a narcissist in my youth, more so. But a hypervigilant narcissist, their locus of self-affirmation and self-fixation is their work. It's all about what do I do. They tend to be less popular as people, but highly respected for their work, because that's where they kind of put it all. Kellyanne's a hypervigilant narcissist, and she's running herself ragged. You know, I think she's still very much brilliant, but I think she needs a vacation, quite frankly.
Well, if she needs a vacation after 3 weeks, then she is not going to make it. It's
not 3 weeks. You know, she was in the Cruz campaign. She's been nonstop since the election, and like, since she took over his campaign in August, And then I mean, she's been working probably 12 to 14-hour days, you know, since August, you know.
But my thing is that comes with the territory. Like anybody who's worked a campaign, I mean, that's what you do. And I feel like she's taken a nosedive pretty quickly. So as you can see, I'm sort of biased against her.
Well, I think the difference, because we look at Omarosa and how, you know, Omarosa never has a bad hair day compared to Kellyanne, who it's rare to see her with a good hair day, quite frankly. Hello. You know, just real is real. But we compare them. But the difference is Omarosa is more, can I say it? She's more of a bitch, and she's more assertive. You know, she's going to be less part of the hypervigilant personality complex. Is Kellyanne says yes way too much. You know, like her, she's so identified with her role. So that's where. But Brittany, I saw an idea bubbled up in you as well, and I think I cut you off, so I apologize. But I just want to turn it back over to you.
Oh no, it's okay. I'm trying to think of what I was saying. Yeah, with Kellyanne, I think that as the walls close in with the things with Russia and with all of that stuff, I think that the ultimate fight behind the scenes is going to be between her and Steve Bannon. I feel like right now, Bannon might be winning. He scares me because you never see him. I've seen him twice. He is terrifying. But I think I think that the ultimate battle will be between the two of them. And I think right now, he has Donald Trump's ear more, but I think it also could switch. And about Kellyanne being a narcissist, I have no mental health professional experience, but I have narcissists close to me in my life. Not really anymore, but I have. And I mean, she really checks all the boxes. I think that's why I'm so like repulsed by her, but also just mesmerized by her. Because it's like it's just textbook. It's the way that you can tell her, oh, you're lying, and just rolls off of her. She just tells a lie. But like you said, Matt Lauer really kind of stopped her in her tracks. And I think that I'm feeling now, like Terry's saying, the jury's out with what's going to happen with her. I think that Bannon kind of probably has Trump's ear just a little bit more as the walls are closed.
I think Kushner has his ear the most.
Yes, I agree. He's scary because I don't even know what he sounds like.
Yep. Well, I wanted to get to the Muslim ban. The Muslim ban is actually supported by 55% of the country. And these are leftist pollsters that are coming up with this figure, by the way. And it's his most supported executive order of all the ones that came through with that first week. So we've got a couple of questions here. I want to kind of start with this idea of whether or not it's okay. We see that the courts have intervened. What is it about this idea of when the courts or any branch of the government, when they intervene contrary to the will of the people, even though some of us would see it as, well, this is morally correct, you know, like how do we feel about that question? And I also want to address this question that came from the election cycle of Trump being made of Teflon. And I'm wondering, you know, like nothing, you know, Pussygate didn't stick to him. Nothing stuck to him in terms of affecting his electability, obviously. But do things like the Muslim ban affect him in any way in terms of the potential for re-election? Parker, would you like to start?
Can you start, actually?
Maybe I'm typically, like Brittany said, like I'm very cynical. I think, you know, the worst will always happen. But if these protests are any indication of where Americans stand, I don't think he's going to be reelected. I mean, people are mobilizing and people are fed up, and it's only been 20 days. So I'm just hoping that the mobilization that we're seeing will hold up through the midterm elections and hold up through 2020. I just think that we can't be complacent. But people seem to be really coming together against this stuff. I mean, what question are we on? Is it 7?
Well, I kind of blended 5 and 6, actually.
Okay.
But really, yeah, you started speaking to 7, so I guess we're
sorry.
sort of like, all the different ones. Just for the sake of time, you know, like I'm just sort of like collapsing some of the questions a little bit. But basically, you know, is he made of Teflon? Is he able to get reelected? And did the courts do the right thing? Basically, you know, 55% of the country actually supports the Muslim ban, and the courts intervened and kind of shut it down. Did they do the right thing? How do we feel about it when anti-democratic decisions align with what we want them to do? We on the left, I guess.
I mean, I don't think that the court can make a decision based on popular opinion. I mean, they're not using opinion polls and where Americans line up against this stuff. So I think that they did the right thing.
Parker, Brittany?
Yeah, to go off of that, the court operates off of the Constitution. One of the reasons why you can't fire a Supreme Court justice is because if they make an unpopular decision and it's constitutional, you shouldn't have the right to just kick them off because you don't like their ideas. Along with Trump's attacks on the media, another scary thing is his attack on the judicial branch of our country, just because we've seen that the legislative branch will not stand up to him. And it seems like our only sort of safe hold is relying on judges to say this is unconstitutional, when even if the majority of America agrees with it, the majority of America has not read the Constitution. Let's be honest. So just because we agree with it, you know, multiple presidents have had their acts rescinded just because, and we haven't seen this attack on the judicial branch as we have with Donald Trump.
And I just want to add one last thing. A lot of times my mother, she'll say stuff like, and these judges weren't even elected. These are appointed people, and they're, you know, they have these lifetime opinions. Now I see not now, but with these opinions that have been coming down from the courts over the last week or so, you really see the value in why they have these appointments and why they're not elected. I mean, if they were elected, there would be a backlash for doing what the Constitution says. So, I mean, I think we're getting an education in like in these documents that are supposed to guide the country if you want to pay attention.
Everyone's paying more attention now. I agree that the educational value of the Trump presidency, despite Betsy DeVos, it might end up being. But Brittany, obviously, I always want to ask you anything about government.
Well, I never thought I would be happy about anything about court or a judge or anything. But, you know, I would say democracy cuts both ways. You can be pro-democracy, but we're not going to always like the results of democracy. And as Parker was saying, the judges, they have to answer to the Constitution, and what the Constitution says is what goes. And I'm not an originalist at all. I have a very liberal interpretation of the Constitution, but no religious test is the First Amendment. I mean, it's clear. It's clear. It's like you can't even get around what he was trying to do. I mean, he used his tweets, used Giuliani's like snitch self, being like, no, they wanted to make it a Muslim ban. Like, you can't. There's just no way you can. Yeah, I'm like, he might actually save us because he can't keep his mouth shut. But he, you know, I just think that, you know, I'm happy about their decision. I think their decision was constitutionally sound. And, you know, I really didn't think it would be the judiciary that would be standing in between Trump and what's happening. But, you know, the legislature isn't doing anything. I really think Paul Ryan wants to take Medicare away from poor people or whatever he wants to do, and he'll stay silent until then. But, I mean, it is very disconcerting that so many people agree with the Muslim ban. And I think, you know, America, and it's Americans of all races, to be honest. But I feel like I see it a lot from white America, or maybe in a very public way, even though Black Americans said the same thing. But we'll use 9/11 to validate their racism or their Islamophobia. And because we lost people in 9/11, which is obviously very sad and very tragic, it's like it emboldens this racism and this Islamophobia, and we use that one event to want to enact the racism that has always been there. And, you know, I'm skeptical. I don't know if he's going to put forth another executive order and the court's going to, they have to go by precedent and I think they have to look at the other cases. But there's still part of me that thinks he may be able to get away with it. I'm just hoping
he might still be Teflon.
Yeah, he might still just be like, okay, well, I guess it didn't say Muslim before, but I just think I'm just wondering if he'd be able to make some changes that he'll find some court that would agree with the stance. I'm not really sure. I'm happy. I think there's a victory in the Ninth Circuit's decision, but I'm also kind of like, we're going to have to see. A lot of bad laws have been passed in America. The Constitution wasn't good enough. I mean, the Founding Fathers, I don't have a very high opinion of them. So, I think we still have a lot of work to do. So I wouldn't be surprised if something was able to sneak through. I think right now, I don't know with him, because it kind of seems like this week things are kind of starting to fall down. But I also think, like I said, Americans just have this visceral reaction to like a white rich man in a suit. So like he might be able to kind of skate by, or do something else or start some conflict. But I honestly think he wants a terrorist attack to be able to get through be able to be the savior, the white, masculine, wealthy, smart, intelligent, powerful savior, and get these things through. So I'm very on the fence about what's going to happen, but I'm happy that the judiciary made a constitutionally sound decision.
Yeah, well, it worked for the last Republican president.
Yeah.
But so is he going to win? We were already speaking to it. Is he going to win re-election in 2020? What can the left or the Democrats do to prevent it? Who can beat him? Who can bring the left back together, as it's still kind of fractured at this time? Brittany brought up the problem of representation within the Democratic Party. Is that something that can be brought into the fold more? And is that part of the solution for defeating Trump in 2020? I know that's a lot of questions, but I think they're all related. Brittany, go ahead, Brittany.
Okay, I'll start. My issue with the left is, and it was my issue with Hillary Clinton, and I think that Bill Clinton had a lot of this too. Very like, no, I'm liberal. I think everyone should be able to have rights, but let me do the talking. Like, I'm going to be the one that gets this for you. I'm the one that can do it. And I think that the left has that problem. It's a lot of baby boomers, a lot of older white men, some white women. There are a few minorities in the Democratic Party, definitely more than the Republican Party, but I think they need to let the marginalized speak for themselves and not just speak for them. It just can't be this white power structure where they're saying, oh, let us get through, like, oh, white women, like, let us get the results of feminism, let us break the glass ceiling, and then we'll get it for you, don't worry about it. And I think that's really the issue that they have. And I think if they want to win, they need to look at their blind spots and let marginalized people speak and let us talk and not let us, but kind of, get out of the way a bit and have it be a party where more people are speaking and people from different backgrounds are speaking. I don't really think Donald Trump's going to make it through the first 4 years. I just don't see how he can be president for all these 4 years. I think that by August we'll be in a war with somebody. I think by the end of this year, by the end of the summer, I think we'll be in we'll be skirmishing with someone.
The news tonight is saying that they are saying they're going to put boots on the ground in Syria. I mean,
and people are going to be happy with it because Obama's policy in Syria didn't really lead to any change. So I think that'll probably be something that's supported, like the Muslim ban. I think it'll be something that's supported by a majority of Americans, even Americans who don't necessarily support Trump but support American imperialism. I think they will be like, okay, put boots on the ground. Like, we have to save these countries. There are a lot of terrible things happening in Syria, obviously, but I think that a lot of people will be supportive of it. I think it'll help. I think he thinks it'll help him, but I don't think he's going to make it. I don't know what we can do to prevent it. The Democrats seem just to be completely inept. I love Keith Ellison. I think he's great, but I don't think America's going to elect a Black Muslim. I just don't think we're going to do it. But
to DNC chair or to
no, I mean, I like him.
President.
He could go all the way. I love him, but I don't think I don't really think he's going to win DNC chair, and I definitely don't think that he could emerge as a viable candidate. But then again, I didn't think Obama could, so I could be proven wrong. But I don't know what's going to happen in 2020 as far as the Republicans versus the Democrats winning the presidency. I'm really hoping in 2018 that we can get some seats in the midterm. I'm feeling pretty pessimistic. I'm feeling pretty like our country has shown like the people that we will elect to office. So I'm not sure. The thing that I'm the most sure about is that Pence will probably be president.
Oh my God.
I know.
And like between now and 2020, is that what you mean?
Now in 2020, I really think so. And
so Trump will be impeached, and then Pence will move up the ladder.
By a heart attack or something. Just I think. Have you seen him even trying to be like rude, but the stress is getting to him really. And
he's the oldest elected president.
Yeah, and he there was actually someone tweeted, I think Sally Cohn, who I really like. She tweeted like straightforwardly, this is what's gonna happen. It was like 4 steps, and it was like impeach Trump and Pence, and then Paul Ryan runs against Hillary Clinton and Hillary wins. And I'm like, guys, we have to get off of Hillary Clinton. Like, she's not gonna
please, Jesus.
Yeah, let it go. Like,
let it go. She's not going to let it go. She's going to try again. Like, let it go, though.
Still, like, if the left is still like, oh, well, Hillary could still be president, we're going to lose. I mean, we're never
we got to take her out.
Yeah, she's done. You know, I was sad when she made her speech that said, you know, the speech came out and was like conceding the election. I was sad, but she's done. They tried to do the, like, I'm kind of going on a rant. I'm sorry. They did the whole like Kate McKinnon playing Hallelujah SNL. That was like they need to just let it go. I laughed. I didn't. People were like, I cried. I was just laughing. I'm like,
no. Yeah, she is all the way done. She's got to go.
I think she'll run for mayor of New York. I think she's gonna do that. But
I think she's going to try again. I think she's going to try again in 2020. I really do. But I think the Democrats need to shut it down.
Yeah, I don't know if they will.
Oh my God.
I really hope they. Yeah, I know. I really hope that they do. I don't know.
They're idiots, man. If they don't, then we need a massive migration away from the Democrats. You know, like whether that's Greens or whether that's the Socialist Party or whether we just create another party like Angela Davis says we need to do. And she just dropped a book. I need to check out that book. But like, yeah, if they try that again, we just need to show them, no, you guys are no longer one of the top 2. There's going to be a new top 2, and you guys are done. You know, that's what millennials need to do.
And I agree with you. And I would have vehemently disagreed with that last year before Hillary lost. I feel like the way that the Bernie supporters and Joe Biden supporters felt before the election is the way that I'm feeling now. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm on time. Maybe I'm late, but I feel like now it's time. But that's the way that I'm feeling, is that they're just not working for the people. I mean, they're just so disconnected that I just don't see them as a viable party at all. I mean, you know, they might bounce back, but I don't see it right now.
You're on time. We was early, girl.
What I was talking about.
But Parker and Terry Ann, what do you guys have to add to this? I'm sorry, did you have something else, Brittany?
I'm good.
Well, I would just say to Brittany's point about minorities, I just wonder how viable that is, you know, because minorities come out and we vote for Democrats no matter what. Like, there was no discussion of Black Lives Matter, no, like, very minimal discussion of issues that are affecting, you know, people of color. And Black women still came out in huge numbers and voted in huge majorities for Hillary Clinton. I want to say it was like 94%. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, we've got white women and working class white people, and I know we'll get to it later in the discussion, who came out, you know, and just put their whiteness before anything else. And so I guess what Democrats are going to have to do, and I hate to say it, they're going to have to move away. I don't know how they can move away anymore from race because they don't seem to be addressing it, you know, but they've got to, I guess, embrace white working class people and get them on our side somehow, some way.
But what if maybe that's something that's a mantle for you to pick up, Parker? I mean, like instead of saying, because I just think all these old rules, we can't say that they continue to. I mean, Donald Trump's in the White House, okay? So like nothing that has ever been precedented or any political common sense statement, none of it applies anymore. You know, like it's a whole new day, and maybe that's something for you to be involved with in terms of creating a political solidarity amongst Black people that's not just being completely loyal to the Democratic Party. You know, just putting that out there. Just wanted to be more optimistic, I guess.
I think that just looking at the Democratic Party as an institution, if we're going to talk about what can the Democratic Party do to become viable, they have to win back working white people. Like that is, if that's what we're talking about. And even Bernie on Meet the Press this Sunday, he said he's not interested in a third party. He's interested in rebuilding the Democratic Party, which I thought was, I was like, wow. So I sort of think it's two separate conversations. If we're going to talk about like the DNC and Democrats, it is about like bringing back these working class people, unions, bringing them back in. But if it's about like trying to build something different, then I think that's a different conversation.
But I do think for, you know, Black people, it's just so scary to sort of step outside of the Democratic Party because, you know, traditionally, if you make a third party out of your constituents, that sets the other party up to win. And if Republicans win, we see, you know, dismantling of voting rights. We see Affordable Care Act is going away. We see all these detrimental things happening to our community. And I guess that's how the Democrats have kept hold of us, because even if we're not being served, it's better than, you know, being acted harmfully against.
Brittany, yeah, I saw it coming.
I think that what you just said, Parker, reminds me of what you said about how your friends go out and they can do certain things that you can't do. It's like Black voters, you know, stepping out of who we usually vote for. I think Black voters are the most politically astute voters, period, especially Black women. But, you know, you can't step out. You have to, and that's really the way I vote. I'm like, okay, so who do I want on the Supreme Court? Who do I want to be Attorney General? You know, when Obama was president, you still had issues with the police. I mean, you saw police still killing people, but you have to make the most sound decision from where you are. So the Democrats have kind of gotten away with just being able to be barely there and kind of phoning it in to Black people and to Black and brown voters, and we still have to vote for them because, I mean, what's the other alternative? Like you said, the Voting Rights Act getting dismantled, voter suppression. So the Democrats may not be great, but we have been in this position where it's like, we cannot afford to have it be any worse. I think now, seeing Trump, I think that is an opportunity for us to be, okay, well, maybe we've hit bottom, so we can try to rebuild in a new way.
Yeah. I think, you know, there's an economic progressive platform that does not have to reinscribe white supremacy in a negative way. You know, like there's a way to in my opinion, there may be a way. Maybe this is more of a question than a statement. Is there a way to make a platform that appeals to the demographic that was lost to Trump? You know, when you look at those people who voted Obama, would have maybe voted for Sanders, but chose to vote for Trump. Is there such a thing as a platform that appeals to all sides?
I think so, but I think, you know, I kind of, when I hear the reach out to white working class voters, sometimes I'm like, I don't know, because I think the reaching out ends up being a lot of coddling. And I think that maybe they need to be given more credit and not coddled and told how we are all in this together and we can work together to create a new base and not a new party, but I can't even think of the word, but a new base basically, and how our interests are aligned. And I think when I heard Democrats talking about reaching out to white working class voters, it's been in very much a way that just, it's like, no, we understand your specific concerns, and like we understand, like we're going to try to like rationalize your racism or excuse your racism. And I think we really need to have hard conversations. And I'm not really sure if the Democrats are ready to do that, or if they're reaching out to white working class voters is going to do that.
I mean, watching President Obama make his final speech, he started talking about, I don't know what this point in the speech was, but he basically said, and Democrats, we need to understand the pain of the white male who feels like his opportunities are going away. And I was like,
I hated that. I'm sorry.
Really?
Serious.
What you're telling us? Like, I agreed with most of what he was saying that night, but that part, I was just like, you want us to suck it up and just sort of like make white men feel better. I mean,
ain't that America? That's America.
at a minimum, I feel like the Democratic Party needs to forsake white men. Like, let's just say we're not even going to deal with white men, but I will say, let's work with white women. I mean, I don't know if that's intersectional. I don't know. Like, I don't know the language behind that, but I do feel like if we can bring some white women along, we could probably rebuild the Democratic Party. I mean, I'm going to vote Democrat because I honestly feel like voting any other way is throwing away my vote. And that's where like my generation might be different from Parker and the millennial generation.
No, I agree with, that's how I felt. I felt like I just couldn't afford to not vote for her. And I just feel like this country, you know, the foreign policy is never going to be something I agree with. So I was just voting like I agree with Hillary with 3 things out of 10, and I agreed with Trump 0 things out of 10. So I had to vote for my 3, even though 3 isn't enough.
Yeah, I just as the one person who chose differently. I'll say that I could after Clinton especially made her IPAC address, where she made it very clear that she intended to invest more drone technology into Israel and that kind of thing. I think intersectional feminism, and I'm evolving my terminology. I'm going to start calling myself an intersectional liberationist. Because some people are feeling territorial about feminism or whatever. And I think that just to make it broader, I'm going to start calling myself an intersectional liberationist. To be an intersectional liberationist or an intersectional feminist, you have to stand in solidarity with the women and children in Palestine, you know, and all these other places. And so my strategy and my hope has always been, and just to clarify, if I had felt that there was a real risk that Virginia was going to go to Trump, I would have revised and reconsidered this opinion. I'm not going to necessarily say that I would have voted for Hillary Clinton, because I really see her as the least, you know, the worst example of feminism. Quite frankly, I think that she really has, she's incredibly problematic. But I would have reconsidered my position. And if she had put Sanders on the ticket or Elizabeth Warren on the ticket or a vice president that I could have been more enthusiastic about, I would have considered a different course. But to me, the mission is let's stop capitulating and saying that there are limits to what's viable on the left. You know, it's just like the Affordable Care Act, which is now going to be tossed out the window. We need universal single payer. We need it to be a real left thing, you know, and I don't think that my opinion is necessarily, again, I recognizing check your privilege, right? Check your privilege, Sean, because like I do have that privilege to be safer, you know, in this world, in this Trump world. But that's nothing to take lightly. But I think as that person, my best usage of this privilege is to say, no, we need to drive this further. You know, we need to not make these deadly compromises. But that's not saying that I think that you all are wrong. You know, Brittany and I sussed this out last year as well. It's like, I agree with your conclusions and you being who you are, you know, like, but this is just what my conclusion, who I am, you know?
Yeah. So I agree. The thing that you said about intersectional feminism, I think the one thing that, and I've heard this from other people that ended up not voting for Hillary. I don't think that voting for Hillary, or I don't think that it means that I or other people who voted for her are not in solidarity with other women around the world. I don't know if that's what you're implying, but I hear that contention a lot that, if you are feminist, if you're an intersectional feminist, it's all women. And I agree. It's every woman. It's not just American women. It's not just white women, just Black women. It's women everywhere. And I grew up with foster siblings my whole life. I think almost 20 people that were from Afghanistan, Yemen, Haiti, lots of different, Somalia, lots of different countries. And I feel that I stand in solidarity with them. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that a vote for Hillary or a vote for the least shitty option is necessarily trying to say, I don't care about these women. Because, I do. I really care about these women. And I don't agree with much of the foreign policy that I think that Hillary would espouse. And I don't know. I think I have trouble with it. I don't think that you're wrong, but I think it's something that I wrestle with myself as a feminist and as someone who believes herself to be an intersectional feminist. Like, what do you do? What do you do with all of these terrible options? What do you do when, as a Black woman with a Black son, I don't feel like I can afford to vote third party. I don't feel like I can afford to even have a chance that the Democrat may not win because we have Jeff Sessions. So it's kind of hard, I think, for me, and it's something I'm trying to work on, viewing, my own survival, because I have to survive, but then trying to include all these women that I do care about.
Yeah, well, and I didn't mean to imply that you're less of a feminist.
Yeah, no. I didn't think you were. I just think it is something that we do have to think about.
Right.
We do have to think about. Yeah.
And my reasoning was, if the Democrats aren't going to be a real leftist party, then what's the point? And to me, you cannot be an unabashed warmongering imperialist and still call yourself a proper leftist. I think Clinton also represented the most right-wing side of the Democrats, and and just throughout her career is more about talk than action anyway. More about saying the right things, but who knows what the hell she does behind closed doors. And so that's kind of where I came from. To me, it's like being an early defector. Like, my vote didn't make a difference. Virginia went to Hillary Clinton, but hypothetically in those Rust Belt states, where Jill Stein probably did make a difference, being those early defectors from the Democratic Party, yes, it's given us what we have now, but it's like Terry Ann said at the beginning, closer to the beginning of the talk, it's like, look at how woke everyone's getting. Look at how mobilized and organized people are getting. Being these early defectors from the Democrats, rather than pointing the finger and say, oh my God, you should have. Let's just rejoice in the fact that we're all getting more woke and that we all have this opportunity to coalesce. And I, for one, maybe I am an eternal optimist, but I feel that we're not too late. I feel that what's happening right now is such that we're gonna have a rough couple years, and who knows how it turns out. Maybe he'll get impeached, whatever comes about. But at the end of all this, by 2020, we're going to have a much stronger leftist alliance that is more centered on the core values of what it means to be a leftist.
Yes, I agree with all of that. I also think, though, a rough couple of years, if I'm being honest, it may not be that rough for me, but it's going to be rough for someone. It's going to be
life or death for someone.
Yeah, it's going to be life or death for many people. And I think that, Virginia was likely to go blue, but isn't Virginia likely to go blue because people are making the decision to vote for Hillary even if she's not the best candidate? Mm-hmm. So I feel like, to be able to say, Virginia's going to go blue, I know it's going to do this. It is because some people maybe don't want to vote for her, but will vote for her anyway. Yes. That kind of makes sense. I feel like nothing is a guarantee, but
yes, being
able to vote your conscience is a privilege based on the fact that maybe other people won't, because they just feel like they have to vote for whoever's there.
And living in, Danville goes blue, has gone blue since 2008. But I technically live in Pittsylvania County, so I technically do live in Trump country. And so, you know, my white skin makes a difference. It really does. My male privilege makes a difference. It really does. But again, the way I see it is it's more of, from the privilege perspective, how can I maximize my privilege toward what I see as the best thing that I can contribute to all this? You know, that's usually how I make my decisions, and always making my decisions with intersectionality in mind. And of course, with my specific emphasis of having Terry Ann and Parker, you guys may not know this about me, but I actually majored in Black Studies at William & Mary. Like I'm especially interested in being a racial ally for the African American community. And not that I do it perfectly, of course I do not, but like that's just how I see it. It's like I feel like I'm here to offer a perspective on whiteness that is, you know, I'm here to be truthful about what white people are, and I'm here to offer whatever I can in terms of this this intersectional liberationist project. But we haven't heard from Parker and Terry Ann for a while. Do you guys have something to throw in?
I mean, what Brittany said just sort of made me start thinking about the fact that a lot of the things that I care about won't necessarily impact me. Like if Obamacare goes away, I mean, I have great health insurance. My family has great, affordable health insurance. My retirement plan is probably going to do very well. You know, if Trump is able to keep the market breaking records. So, you know, I vote for what I feel is like what's in the best interest of my community. And even though I'm not even really part of the same community that I grew up in anymore, that's where my vote lies. I just lost my train of thought.
I think Parker stole it. Parker's got something.
Well, I will say I have a friend who her parents own a small business, and she's Jewish, and her parents ended up voting for Donald Trump. And you know, she didn't really care about it because Virginia had turned blue until she saw the Muslim ban, right? And she was like, you know, this is just like the Holocaust. You know, I can't believe that this is happening. And so I think what we've seen is just a loss of empathy until things are too late. Like we can't empathize and think about what the impacts are going to have other than on ourselves. The whole reason why her family was so pro-Trump was because they had that small business and they thought, you know, tax cuts, this is going to be great for me and this is going to impact my life in a positive manner. And so, it, you know, I can't necessarily discredit her for those opinions. I just, you know, my parents work for the government, so that's never been a thought of mine. But it just seems like people in this election especially started to vote, you know, because it would directly benefit them, they thought, rather than, you know, negatively, the possible many negative impacts that it would have on other people.
Well, I come from a family mostly of Republicans, honestly. I think my brother thinks of himself as liberal, and I consider myself an independent, but I always vote in the left direction. Historically, not that that will always be the case. I don't see myself voting Republican, but hypothetically, I could get behind a libertarian if I were convinced that he or she were not a corporate hack. But what I will say that from within my family, like there is something that is the ACA has done some negative things for small business. And as someone who is interested in my nonprofit, Sustainable Equity, we're doing this through my nonprofit's YouTube page right now, is really dedicated toward decentralizing and sharing skills to give people the ability to start businesses. And I'm particularly interested in cooperative businesses. So from that perspective, you know, like there is, to me, there is a way to make that work for the people. Now, of course, I personally would have never voted for Donald Trump just by virtue primarily of his hateful rhetoric. Like I just could never get behind someone like that, you know, and I've never voted Republican in my life, and I don't see it happening unless something radically crazy happens to the Republicans. I mean, over time they do switch, you know, like if you look at the long enough view, they do switch like that. I just don't know if it's going to pivot like that in my lifetime, but I will say that certain things certain things about the small business side of it, even thinking in the direction of like vouchers, you know, like recognizing that the system is trying to destroy public education. There are ways we need to think of like the ways to make lemonade, you know, like let's make the most. Beyonce told us, you know, like let's see if we can make the most of this shittiness, you know. And for me, like I see clear ways in which I can integrate the Trump agenda into my agenda to make it work the best for the people, you know, like, so that's part of how I'm kind of thinking about it. But you know, ACA was a Heritage Foundation policy, you know. ACA was it was more than you know, it was like at best a quarter step, you know. To me, the ACA was designed to fail, but the left wanted it to fail when a Democrat was in office so that they could go more towards socialized healthcare. But of course, now we see that that's just not the way it's going to go. But
I wanted to just throw something else in there about like third-party voting, because just in terms of Democrats sort of going along this line of who's next, in Virginia politics, Ralph Northam is next to become governor. And I mean, I wholeheartedly support him, but now Perriello is coming up as like a contender. And, you know, I hear people saying, oh, he's more to the left than Ralph Northam and blah, blah, blah. But I'm just like, we saw what just happened in the presidential election. Why are we messing around with this governor's race? Like, we need, this is my personal opinion, we need not a shoo-in, but we need someone who we can all rally around rather than making these two candidates spend all this money against each other in a primary. And I mean, to see, I know that people have different opinions about Governor McAuliffe, but when these laws come across his desk attacking Planned Parenthood or attacking LGBT rights, he vetoes them. So we need to make sure that, you know, there's another Democrat to fill his spot. And so I think this whole thing of Perriello coming up and being further to the left, and that appeals to people. I understand that it appeals to people, but at the same time, I feel like we're shooting ourselves in the foot when we see how valuable McAuliffe has been around women's reproductive rights and voting rights and LGBT rights.
QIPM.
So I'm just like really frustrated to see him trying to sort of come up and run against who really is next.
The two top I'm blanking on their names, but the two top contenders on, and you're much more educated about the gubernatorial race than I am. I've only lightly dabbled in educating myself about it. But the two top contenders on the Republican side are both Trumpians, you know, like they're both like following lock and step with that national like Trump agenda, you know.
Right. So that's why I feel like it's so important somebody needs to tell Perriello to have a seat. Because we can't afford this.
Yes, Brittany, do you have anything to add to that? Because after you, I think I'll take it in the direction of like the Women's March and, you know, the dense Beckys.
You know, I made a promise to myself that I was going to follow local politics more, but I have not done that yet. So till next time for me.
Till next time for you. Yeah, and I don't have anything else to add. Parker, did you want to add something to what your mom said?
Well, I'll just say to any Virginians watching, this next election is going to be one of the most important elections out there. These next elections that we see coming are the ones where there's a reason why Virginia has an election every year, because they know that if we have an election every year and we have important elections after the presidential election, people won't show up. And that's when Republicans win. Republicans win when people don't show up. The majority of us as Americans are liberal leaning. So it's our job to show up and vote. So I'll just say that to anyone watching.
Hallelujah. I'm with you on that. Okay, so we did start touching on the 53% of white women who's voted for Donald Trump despite Pussygate. Then, so if anyone wants to add to that, we can add to that. But I also want to talk about the Women's March and how problematic it was in terms of the sex workers' rights issue that preceded it. I'm actually open. I don't know if you guys are open to it, but I'm actually open to talk about the fact that they excluded anti-Trump women who identified as pro-life. I think that's an interesting layer as well, because to me, it's a missed opportunity for coalition building. And then the Native American issue with the women in attendance who felt exoticized, ignored, disrespected, reduced by the white women who were there. What's going on with our white sisters who are waking up, and how do we best approach it?
So for this question, I actually asked a white woman. I phoned a friend.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, I asked one of my best friends. I were talking about how she was just feeling very disheartened by the fact that 53% of white women voted for Trump. And I love her perspective. I would say she's woke, even though that word is so overused, but I just wanted to know what she thought about it. So if you don't mind, I'll just try to read quickly some of her comments. Okay, so basically broke it into two reasons that she thinks that white women voted for Trump over Hillary. And the first one was value of race and economic status over gender. And she thinks that these women interpreted voting for Trump. I'm sorry, hold on. She interpreted the gains and the power of whiteness that would come from voting for Trump to be outweighing the potential losses in gender equality. Basically, they were voting for their race over their gender and thinking this would provide them with the most economic security, or better, at least keeping where they are economically. And she also talked about Trump selling the idea of a zero-sum game. If one person succeeds, another person loses. And that factors into the frenzy of power protectionism. And the second thought, which I thought was just really awesome, that I loved, she talked about the Victorian notion of true womanhood, or true white womanhood. And she said, we talk about women as they are in relation to other people: a mother, a wife, a daughter, a sister. So a good woman is a caring mother, a loving wife, and women exist in relation to the people that they're meant to care for. So that's a good woman, and good men are strong, successful, brave protectors. And that role of nurturer and caretaker and supporter, and that role of standing by your man, ride or die, that spurred women on to vote for Trump, because that meant that there were better outcomes for the men in their lives, and thus better outcomes for them. And she said, to boil it down, I think that these women believe they stand to gain economically, and they believe that they're fulfilling a societal role. So moving forward, the question is how to change the belief system about gendered roles, how to break through the zero-sum game that Trump keeps touting, that if someone else wins and you lose, that white people have most to lose. And she said that, back to the notion of true womanhood, I'm kind of jumping around, you have paternalism at home and paternalism nationally speaking, and you have the good women that support the system. So she's brilliant.
Bam.
I don't know if I did her words, but she really laid it out in her comment to me, so I thought I was going to try to pare it down. But I really like that notion of true womanhood and people voting basically for a good outcome for their husbands and a good outcome for whiteness, and putting their race first and their gender second.
That's interesting. How do you, Brittany, as a woman, as a married woman, what are the problematics with that as, I guess, survival strategy, political self-understanding?
Well, I think I thought about this a lot as a married woman, and as a woman married to a white man, because you see with the policies coming down, a lot of the policies will affect me and will affect my son, but will not affect my husband. It will affect him and that it affects us, but it won't affect him. He's aware of that. I guess that I could hide behind that. He works for the government. He works in an area that Trump doesn't really like. He works in climate and weather, but he'll be fine. He's a breadwinner. I don't work. So I could, easily kind of be like, oh, well, let me vote for Trump. He's going to make America great again, make things great for my husband. Our taxes are going to be lower. Our taxes are lower under Trump. But it's like, do you want to live in a world that treats people that way? Do you want to live in a world that disenfranchises people? Is that the world you want your children to grow up in? Is that is that the environment that you want to be in? And it's not. And do I want to say, okay, well, I'll have fewer opportunities, but my husband will be fine? I mean, that's very problematic. I mean, it's just, you know, I think that some people may feel like that's their best bet in life, and that's what they have to do. I see how someone could reach that conclusion, but I just also don't see why anyone would want to live that way. I mean, you're persecuting other people. These are people that your children are going to grow up with and live in a country with. Like, I think that can be very destabilizing. Do you want your children to grow up in that world? That's how I feel. And I don't think that my husband's success, you know, we're very much a team, but I don't think that just him being successful means that that's the end all and be all of our entire family. And I think I wrote on one of your Facebook thing about the Fox News thing, like, women aren't the background to men's lives. Like, we have to think about our interests as well, not just our husband's interests. And I think it's a very old-fashioned, very dated way of thinking, but I suppose that it works for them.
Yeah, some people are actually mad at me for posting that link, but to me, the reason I posted it is like, I was cackle laughing the whole time. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe like this kid Becky is saying this shit in 2017. You know, like, this is crazy.
When I got engaged, and I tweeted about this, I think I've talked to Terry about this a bit. When I got engaged, just people came out of the woodwork with the worst advice, just the worst, like, most like be submissive, like all of this crap. I'm like, okay, do any of these people know me? Number one, and I just think that there's this idea of marriage that's just ingrained, that just hasn't left our country, and I think it's really one of the blind spots, or one of the places that feminism hasn't been able to penetrate, just the home and the marriage. And I think, yeah, a lot of these women voted because, you know, their husband's making the money. They're not working, so they're like, okay, am I going to vote to like get a bunch of women jobs or a bunch of black people that I don't even know, and like maybe my husband won't get that promotion, or am I going to vote so he can keep taking, so I can stay at home and so I can have my good life? But
and I kind of wanted to add that I've watched some conservative millennial women, white women, on YouTube recently. I saw it was very interesting. I mean, these are women who are not. I think the whole millennial generation is like more woke. You know what I mean? Even the conservative side is more woke, but than what we're traditionally used to thinking of. So these weren't women who were dumb. These weren't women who were who did not have a critical consciousness with respect to the way things work. They just came to different conclusions. But one of the things that they were saying as well is just owning the fact that a lot of millennial women who ultimately supported Trump were doing it to impress guys that they wanted to date. You know, so that I kind of wanted to shift it to Parker a little bit, because Parker, you know a lot of white girls. What do you see going on in your generation? I mean, again, not a voting age, but did you see young third wave? You would be Brittany and I would be first wave millennials by our ages. You would be like considered a third wave millennial. So are you seeing that same thing, like what I just described?
You know, one of the things that I take pride in is most of white women that I know of my age are absolutely disgusted by Trump, and they do not put up with him, and they hate him. So I can't really, speak to that. When you said that people were doing it to get guys, that was something just insane to me.
That's what they said. I'm just repeating.
Okay, yeah, but no, I have not seen that in my generation, and hopefully that's not just, an anomaly within my friend groups, but hopefully that's all over the place.
Cool. Well, I want to move away from toward the other thing, toward the women's march and toward looking at the women on the left. Does anyone else have anything? Terry Ann, did you have something to weigh in here, or did anybody else want to?
I missed most of that. I missed most of that, so I'm gonna defer.
But what I do want to say is, I guess the best thing that's come out of this election, I think, is a sort of new sense of quote unquote wokeness. I'm part of that Facebook group, Pantsuit Nation. And in one of the posts, a woman was just talking about, she went to the grocery store the day after the election and was just looking at these people and just saying, you know, oh, that person's a Trump voter. You know, I don't know if I could be friends with them, or I wonder how they're looking at me. That person over there, she definitely had to vote for Hillary. I wonder how this person voted. And at the end of it, you know, I'm not saying it as eloquently as she did, but she basically said, it really woke me up as to what it must be like to live as a Black person or as a minority every day. So I would hope that what white women are getting out of this sense of discomfort at the least is a sort of awakening as to what it is like to live every day as a minority, as someone who has their rights attacked.
I think for liberal white women, that Pussygate really sealed it in terms of saying that, like, you know, this is somebody who can say this and still get elected. And I think that's something that was a shock to their system, that was not new to queer people at all, and was not new to people of color at all. You know, like it was only new for liberal white women. And so, like, I do want to kind of like take it back to the Women's March. Parker, your mom tells me that you're also a fan of Gazi Kodzo. So I know he's among the people from the Uhuru movement who have been talking about the Women's March as the White Women's March. You know, so like, did we tune into the Women's March? Do we agree with that assessment? Like, what's going on there in terms of like people who are newly woke, our white sisters who are newly woke, but they're still not quite intersectional yet. Like, there's still some problematics with their wokeness. And then what do we do? How do we help them, you know, like become more intersectional and more woke, I guess?
I mean, I definitely think that not everyone is as woke as we would like them to be. But I've always, you know, there's been two sides to, you know, at this point, we should be embracing them and letting them know what wokeness is. But part of me knows that it's not my job. If you really wanted to become woke, the internet is a great place to do that. You know, you have all of these resources. You know, and I think that unfortunately, it seems like white women have, you know, they're somewhat open to the idea of intersectionality, but only when we bring it to them, right? So you know, you can't, it's never just assumed that you're going to include, you know, Black people, LGBT, all these minority groups. You have to bring it to them. Where on the other hand, whenever we make a movement, it's assumed that our movement will include everyone.
Right. Well, I see that everyone, I saw Brittany shaking her head in emphatic agreement when you said that it's not our job, but do we have the luxury to say that it's not our job? You know, like, or do we have to hustle up and get everybody caught up so that we can make sure that we make something different happen?
You know, to me, I'm more than welcome to have a discussion with you, but I'm not about to like give you the origins of feminism and like where it came from and tell you all of these philosophies. You know, it takes Googling something, and it just seems like the reason why I'm so sort of opposed to it is because it seems like it's so accessible. It's so easy to open yourself up to these ideas and find intersectionality, but, you know, they're just not willing to do it. And I don't want to make broad statements, but when there are such great outlets to find information about the movement, you know, I'm obviously, if you want to have a conversation or if you don't understand something, I'm more than with it, but only to a certain extent. You know, my whole life can't be explaining to you why you should be on our side.
Mm-hmm. Who else has something to add?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Parker said about how it's not the job of intersectional feminists. It's not the job of Black women, of women of color. And I'm the type of person that I'm very willing to talk to people. I'm very willing. It doesn't bother me. I grew up with mostly white people, so I think that my tolerance for it is pretty high. Just, if you have a question for me, like, it's fine. Like, I know when someone's genuine and they just don't know. But the fact is that Black women, women of color, I'll use Black women in particular, we aren't born knowing these things. I mean, I always say that I was liberal, but I went to a very conservative white school. And I would say in college, like, my brand of feminism was total bullshit. It was like just being able to do the same problematic things that men did. Like, it was total crap feminism. Like, it wasn't actual feminism, but I thought that I was so liberated. But I've learned as I've grown and as I've experienced life and as I've read and as I've tried to see things, I think that that's what you have to do. And you have to take that initiative yourself. And I think just from my own example of how much my belief system has changed in my 20s, they can do it too. It can happen. It's just, I think there's often a perception that Black people are born like being these like knowledgeable civil rights like scholars, but everybody has to learn. And if people are willing to learn, like I feel okay about it. And with the Women's March, I really think that we need all women to be liberated. Like, I think we need everybody. I really do. And if white women want to wake up to injustice now and do the Women's March, like, I'll walk with you and we can talk together. But it's like, I'm not going to hold it against anyone that they are late, because I feel like I was late too. So it's fine. But, I think the tweets from the Native American woman in particular, and the fact that it was called the Million Woman March when there's already been a Million Woman March and it's a Black Women's March, that's why a lot of women of color feel skeptical about any mass gathering of white women in the name of feminism. Because it's very much, I call it lean-in liberation. It's very much like the prioritization of like upper-class white women who think that liberation is all about like getting a powerful corporate job, and no recognition of the fact that like, there are Black and brown women like raising your kids, cleaning your house so you can have what you have. And it's just like, I think that the issues facing white women are issues that are relevant to all of us, and they need to be addressed. That can't just be the only feminist issues. Like, we all have to come together and like talk about all of our issues. It can't just be like, I don't know, I even roll my eyes when I see like this girl boss stuff, and I feel really bad about it, but I'm just like, what about the girls who aren't bosses? Like, what about the girls who are hustling, just trying to make it every day, like working with somebody else to like have to raise their kids, like, and I'm just like, I can get it, and that's not necessarily my reality. Like, other people should be able to understand it too. And like, what about the women that don't go to college? What about the women that aren't like Hillary Clinton? What about the women who don't have all of these things? Where is their space? And I think that women of color are rightfully skeptical. I do think that we eventually need to work toward having all of us. So like Parker said, I think the effort kind of needs to be the other way. It doesn't need to be us bringing it to them. But
like
I've been about that forever. Even in motherhood, even becoming a mother, I mean, everything you read is like the stuff that upper class white women think is good for a kid being like totally like, this is the moral thing, this is what you have to do, like, or your child's like not going to be able to make it to the top school, they're going to have a learning disability or mental health. It's like, these are the preferences of white women, and we're taking them and we're centering them and calling it feminism, and that's wrong. And we kind of shift away from that. So I definitely understand the skepticism and the kind of looking at the march like, okay, all these white women, like, we told you how bad it was. And now that Hillary lost, now they're like a super powerful person taken away from them. We're like, oh, or they're like, oh, there are problems in the world. Really could go on.
And
but
as far as, but what?
No, I said I
wanted to respond to the. I wanted to respond to the personal responsibility side of it, point that you raised, because like as someone who majored, as a gay person, but in a different generation where it was starting to become okay, but in my rural Southern Virginia context, it still wasn't. I was the only person who came out in my high school and whatnot. And I go off to college and I end up majoring in Black studies and minoring in women's studies. So I really devoted my entire undergraduate education, and then of course continuing in the years since graduated. I'm 10 years out as of this year from undergrad. I kind of devoted, I devoted my undergraduate curriculum and then some to deconstructing my white male privilege, So I agree, from one hand, it's like, yeah, you got to show some initiative here, now that you've had this experience and this trauma, what are you going to bring to the table? And what I'm finding, it's so, because of course I posted another article yesterday about what Bernie would have won actually means, and it's not about Bernie would have won. We're not literally saying that. What we're saying is that the Democratic Party messed up, and this is the way in which it messed up, and we want to have a productive conversation about the way in which the Democratic Party messed up. And so for the first time in my life, one thing that I'm experiencing right now is the label of sexist being used against me to silence my perspective when I'm trying to have that conversation with white feminists who are not at that level of, who are not willing to own their class privilege, in particular. Because I'm very much affiliated, and I'm a privileged person. I identify as class queer because, I come up in a working class home, but then we're upwardly mobile. So now we're a little bit in a higher level than where we were when I was growing up. So I identify as class queer and upwardly mobile, but still very much aligned with the working classes, and still through my work, through my nonprofit work and through my mission, I'm still very much entrenched in the class oppressed demographics, and that as my community. And still coming up on my own hustles, you know what I'm saying? It's still not at that level where I feel comfortable where I am in terms of my career, my income, and all that. But that's something that I'm experiencing, and why I'm really thinking it's so great to see that consciousness is increasing, coalitions are growing, and so I do feel, obviously, but also because I am devoting my life to the movement. That is my whole thing. I want to be 24/7 in the movement. And so I do feel kind of, maybe it's a white man's burden complex as well, I don't know. But I do feel some more of an impetus to say, how do we critically engage this? How do we dig our heels in and really make something work here? But Terry Ann.
Yeah, the only thing that I'll add is the best meme that I saw the day after the Women's March was the sign that said something like, all you nice women who marched yesterday, will you be at the next Black Lives Matter march? And so I just think it's going to be interesting to see how the people who showed up on January 21st for the march, will they continue to rally for all of these issues that are important? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my main thing. Will you continue to show up? And if you do, then I think that's awesome. But time's gonna tell.
Yeah, I agree. Does anyone want to respond to Terry Ann's very succinct closing thought there? Or?
Yeah, I agree. I saw that sign. I thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
I also thought that kind of, I don't know if it's lack of understanding or just blind spot from the position of being a white woman in America. It was this kind of bragging of no one got arrested and taking pictures with cops and putting the pussy hat on top. And I'm I am honestly terrified of cops. I would not approach cops. I don't, and I've been with white friends where they talk to cops and I'm no, thank you. I'm not going to do that. But I think that there's this kind of blindness, even when protesting and even when standing up to the system, because the system is designed to benefit them in at least some way, as a white person. So I think if, people are interested in having these conversations, it's great, but I think that there's so much action that needs to be done that people who are tuned in need to act, and then these people need to catch up. Like they kind of need to, like we need to start acting rather than. I don't think we're gonna have I don't think we're gonna have a strong, complete coalition right now. I think it'll happen. Maybe it will happen, but I think the people who are plugged in just have to go. It's time to.
Right. So it's kind of like we don't want to slow down our own momentum for those of us who are already here. You know, like we those of us who are all the way ready, we just need to keep running, and like it's their job to catch up.
Yes.
Does everybody agree?
Yeah.
Okay, so I want to sort of move on down to the violent femme portion of the dialogue. So I'm on question 11. Even though some are claiming that sexism decided this election, it is undeniable that some of Trump's most ubiquitous and influential henchmen are in fact women. What roles do Kellyanne, Omarosa, and Ivanka play in the maintenance of his power, and what motivates them? We've already addressed Kellyanne, so we can go back to Kellyanne if you guys want, but I really want to focus on Omarosa and Ivanka more so, since we haven't touched on them yet.
I think that Omarosa and Ivanka and Kellyanne are fine being the beneficiaries of power rather than, I don't really know about Kellyanne, but rather than creating a system in which women can empower themselves. I think they're like, okay, we've made it in this system, like we've attained our goals, and this is evidence that the system can work. I think this is very like, I think that's, even though this may not be what it means, I think that's why sometimes when I see the girl boss stuff, I'm kind of like, okay, guys. It's kind of just like this, if you can make it to the top of the system, there's no need for the system to change. I think that a really symbolic picture was the picture of Ivanka sitting in the Oval Office at the desk with Trump and Trudeau. Just no irony that her dad let her sit there. Like he let her sit there. There's not like a seat at the table, honey. Like he gave you that seat. And it's the conflict between, do you want a seat at the table or do you want to break the table? And like, what is the table sitting on top of? Like, who is the table sitting on top of? I don't think they really care. You know, I find Ivanka to be the worst of the three children. Because the other ones, I mean, they're pretty bad. But I'm just like, I think she knows exactly what she's doing, but I also think that she's given credit for being intelligent and poised just because she checks off all the boxes of rich white womanhood. I think she just, I don't know, she's the one, and I hate saying that because I'm like, oh, Kellyanne's the worst one, so it's like the women are the worst ones, but I think that, I don't know if she's convinced herself, you know, she has her dad's ear that she's pulling the levers of power, that she really does have power, even if it's in the background, but I just feel like she thinks she's made it, but doesn't realize, like, okay, just your dad is letting you sit at the table, honey. This is not like Spice Girls girl power. That's not. And I think I think Omarosa just wants power. I don't think she cares about. Right. I don't think she cares to call herself a feminist or not call herself a feminist or call herself anything. I think she just wants to look out for herself, and that's it. That's just her. She's a predator. I just watch her with amazement sometimes. It's just like, wow. I don't even know. Yeah, I just think she just wants power. And Kellyanne did say that she broke the glass ceiling, which was like the ultimate troll. But then I also think that's what we get for being like, oh, the glass ceiling's gonna be broken with Hillary, and not really qualifying that it's not gonna be broken for all women. Like, okay, then you can say she broke it. Then I thought it was a good, like, it like got me in my chest, but I thought it was a good, like, kind of hit back at the left to say, like, I did break the glass ceiling. I agree. And everything, that's part of what I was thinking of when you were talking about the tokenism, you know, with respect to Ivanka. Same thing can be said for Barack Obama, you know, like the world just didn't magically get better for Black people, for Black men under the Obama years. But yeah, like the left went down that path and sort of set the stage for that. And then Kellyanne comes through and actually does win, you know. Hillary did break a glass ceiling, but not the one she wanted. So I agree. It was a good flashback. So what about you guys, Parker and Terry, and how do you feel about Ivanka and Omarosa?
I mean, I have stronger feelings, I guess, about Omarosa. That clip that you put up of her on The View, I mean, watching it, it was like on the one hand, she was saying these things that like Black women say. She was like, I'm here because of my mother. My mother. And you know, that resonates with Black people. Like, to give
and Christ being the center as well.
Like, yes, we're here on the backs of our mothers. So to hear her say that, I was like, okay. And then she said, and Jesus.
Yes.
Wow. Yes, girl. But then she's just so mean-spirited. Like, the way that she was talking to the panel. So again, like Kellyanne, I'm like, wow, the way that she is able to communicate and not give an inch and get her point across so eloquently, I'm amazed by it. But then on the other hand, I'm just like, I cannot respect her. Mm. And after that, I saw her on a CNN panel, like 4 years ago, and she was like stumping for Barack Obama, saying, you know, 4 more years and the Affordable Care Act. So I mean, she's just basically just like any, really at this point, all politicians, you sell a part of your soul to be a politician. And so she's done that. And so she's just like playing whatever side she can play to have the proverbial seat at the table. I don't think she has a seat at the table. I think she's got some little side office down the hall, around the corner, tucked in somewhere.
Douglas.
Huh?
That she's sitting in the office with Frederick Douglass somewhere.
Right. So, I mean, I'm just fascinated by her, but I have absolutely no respect for her.
So hashtag sellout, basically.
Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, I think that these women, first of all, I don't think they're doing this in the name of feminism, like, but they found a way to play this, you know, in a way that sort of like resonates with a feminist. Like, if you weren't listening to them, if you were just sort of like peeking in on what they were saying, it's just like this, like, we're breaking glass ceilings and how can you be against us because we're women, we're in the top. The way they've played it, they don't want feminism. They don't want to break the glass ceiling. They want power. And, you know, I think that's through and throughout the right. It's not about, you know, country first. It's not about feminism. It's about keeping power for as long as you can. You know, they just came out with the article saying that the White House is literally like Game of Thrones. Like, it's just a power grab. Like, these people are just grabbing for as much power as they can. And I think that's what we're seeing with these women. And I think the way that they're playing it out as though they're feminists is very brilliant, but they're playing us.
Right. So we don't see any sort of like, again, going back to the clip from The View. So when Omarosa talks about how she does care about the inner cities, how that is where she's from, and she sort of projects this idea that she's a mouthpiece for making sure that Trump's, because he kept talking about the inner cities all, you know, throughout the whole election as a euphemism for black issues, for racial issues. But so she's sort of like there to sort of project this notion of like, yes, I'm going to make sure that this is done in the correct way because, you know, I was able to climb up, so I know how to improve the conditions to help other people climb up. What I'm hearing is that all three of you seem to reject that and like, no, she's really just in it for her, and that's all.
Yeah, I mean, you know, to hear her say that her brother was killed at the hands of, like, I don't know if it was gang violence, some sort of criminal violence. Her mother had to bury her brother because of this violence. I mean, that made me say, wow, you know, she can relate to this whole inner city stuff that Trump is promoting. But if you did have a brother who was killed, you would be saying, we need comprehensive gun control. We need reform to the gun lobby. You would be saying, like, We need job programs. We need access to education. Until I hear her say that, or any of these other ministers that he brings out to talk about the inner cities, then I won't take them as genuine. Like, I need to hear you saying something real that's going to address these issues.
You know, she's an ordained minister too. I was like, of what? The Church of Satan? Like, what? Like, because she's not serving, like, you know, she's not serving Jesus energy to me. I mean, like, she does jump, you know, she gets her jump on in the church service. You know what I'm saying? But like,
Right.
I'm just saying, just an observation. So this is what I think. I think that to the extent that she has a seat at the table, it's not about policy. It's about how to get more Black people on board with the regime. You know, like that's when I say that neo-fascism is intersectional, that's what I mean. It's not that it's intersectional in terms of meaningful contributions to the ideology. It's intersectional to the degree that in a society such as America of the 21st century, you can't have a fascist regime that is going to be all people who look like me. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just not, it just wouldn't work, you know? But what's happening, and even with, I don't know if you guys saw that article that I posted, what was it, yesterday or the day before, with the NAACP and two groups, the OCA, the organization formerly known as the Organization of Chinese Americans, and there's one more Asian American centric civil rights group that got on board with that, writing letters to Ajit Pai about getting rid of net neutrality. And the guy who wrote that article, his last name was Fang. I want to say his first name was Lee. He made the point that, let me see if I actually have it. I might actually have it. Yeah, I've got it right here. He made the point that, yeah, it was Lee Fang, and it was, let me see if I can find, NAACP, Organization for Chinese Americans and Asian Americans Advancing Justice, and the National Urban League as well, that are actually arguing against, that wrote Ajit Pai against neutrality. You know, Ajit Pai, the new FCC chair, is making it clear that he's going to target net neutrality. And Mr. Fang makes the argument here that that's, you know, regardless of whatever justifications that they've come up for it, they're really doing this because they've received a lot of money from Verizon and other telecom communications that believe in the erosion of net neutrality for their own selfish purposes. And then Mr. Fang makes the point that minorities especially have benefited so much from having the open forum of the internet, whereas corporate-owned forums were not catering to their needs and giving them the real opportunity to pass the mic and say, like, this is what we believe, this is the authentic view that we want to portray. Even the four of us here today, you know, we're creating a platform that, you know, and saying things publicly through this platform that that we're not seeing in the mainstream, you know, in the corporate-owned sphere. So, you know, that's what I'm saying. You know, neo-fascism to me is to a degree intersectional, but not in terms of ideological diversification. In terms of how do we use the different identities as like chess pieces to increase fascist authority. Brittany, what are your responses to what I'm saying?
No, I agree. I saw the title of the article today, but I wasn't able to read it before our chat. But no, you know, I've actually never heard it put like that. And I agree. It's really, it reminds me of kind of the debate around Black Lives Matter. There's a lot of debate within the Black community about if Black Lives Matter means really that every Black person is going to be liberated, or if it's going to be Black people on the top of the patriarchal pyramid. So I think that's
right.
Kind of the point where is it going to be, you know, true reaching to these identities, or is it just going to be using these identities to just recreate the same system?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's really interesting. And Donald Trump also signed an executive order to stop companies from providing free internet to poor communities as well, didn't he? So is that a part of that, or, like I said, this is their whole plan, their disinformation plan? I think it's just really horrible. I think people like Omarosa too, yeah, like they just want power, and they want, you know, maybe she does want advancement for the Black community, but it's just a recreation of the same system. And there will always be someone at the bottom. So it's not really real liberation. It's just liberation for her and maybe the people that she feels are worthy that happen to be Black.
Right. Parker, Terry Ann, any thoughts?
I was just going to say, in terms of intersectionality, going back a while back to Brittany's point about, and we were talking about how Democrats will always get the Black vote. If Trump manages to find some people who can somehow stir something up in Black people that, resonates with them, this could be, a fight for Democrats. And now I'm not sure how, prominent that will be, but I think that, by putting people like Amr, if he were to find a way to put some more diversity into his cabinet and into the people surrounding him, I think that could be a big danger to, Democrats, but also democracy, because I think more minorities would vote for him if they saw people who look like them. Because, the mentality for some people is, if I see people who look like me, obviously he can't be this monster who hates Black people or people who look like me.
I do know a lot of people who just, for 2008 and 2012, I know a lot of Black people who just said, I voted for Barack Obama because he's Black, like point blank, period. No more needs to be said. No more needs to be thought, and then not to say that to just over-represent that demographic, but there are people who did, who literally just voted for Barack Obama because he was Black. But Terry Ann, you were about to chime in?
This is just a little side note. Back when Barack Obama first was running, Facebook used to have this thing where you put like what party affiliation you were or what your political views were. And one of my friends just had the brother. It doesn't matter. With the brother. But
not the sister. Come on now. What else?
Well, it was all around Barack Obama. I thought that Blackish did something really funny where they had the little girl, the twin, Diane, interview her grandmother. And she was like, well, Grandma, let me ask you these questions. What do you think about gay marriage? And she was like, oh, that's a sin from the pit of hell. Well, what do you think about abortion? And she was like, again, some other biblical reference to abortion being a sin. Well, what do you think about illegal immigration? And she was like, those people need to go back where they came from. They're taking all the jobs from us. And she was like, Grandma, this says that you support Trump. And I mean, I think that, Omarosa could sort of have a message to certain Black people, but I don't see her. I just don't see her saying much. It's just a lot of show. It just seems like it's a lot of show. Like she's just used to the reality show, say inflammatory things to get more ratings but possibly she could, reach out to the Black community, but I just don't hear her saying much.
What? This is just off the cuff crazy. We're getting toward the end of it, obviously, but this is off the cuff crazy. But what if Trump runs again in 2020 and drops Pence and puts Omarosa as the VP candidate, and then the Democrats run Hillary Clinton? You know what I'm saying? What? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe nothing else needs to be said, but wouldn't that be crazy?
Democrats lose again.
Democrats lose again. What if Omarosa does run? Everyone's like, oh, Pence is going to be the successor or whatever. But what if they pivot? And Omarosa's at the top of the ticket someday, and she ends up being the one that breaks the glass ceiling. Wouldn't that be just Twilight Zone?
I mean, I think that people love Ivanka. That crowd, They love Ivanka. She has a future in politics, I think.
She's going to be running as a Democrat, though, right?
Whatever will get her to win, she'll say it.
Yeah, she's a violent femme.
I think the journalist is Emily Nussbaum. She tweets a lot about Ivanka and how she's problematic and can say it better than I can. I think it was a Teen Vogue that had that article about the type of feminism that Ivanka represents, and it was a drag. They really like ripped her out. It was good. It was really good. It was very, very well put. But yeah, I think she does have a future in politics. I mean, she has the look. She's presentable. You know, she can string a sentence together much better than her brothers, who just seem like Beavis and Butthead.
Yeah, like straight up like cave beast, like remedial class.
Yes, and you know now her father was the president, so you know there's a tradition of that. But I hope not, man. I know. I feel like we are wrestling for like the soul of this country, really now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we went through all the questions. Who does anyone have any closing thoughts, or could we maybe try to end on a positive note? Elizabeth Warren, anyone? Elizabeth Warren?
Yeah.
She persisted.
Why did she say yes for Ben Carson? That made me sad. Maybe that's the one thing I like her, but that was the one thing I'm like, why did you vote to put him through committee? I just wanted all the Democrats to vote no on everyone. I think that's like maybe too much to ask, but I just really wanted that. I really wanted them to just be like, we're not gonna because they're gonna get through anyway. But I think I just had this dream of like every single Democrat being like, no. I think I'm just holding on to that a bit.
Well, from the feminist perspective, people are talking about what was her name, Susan Collins, and who's the woman from Alaska?
Kasky?
Yeah,
No.
The ones who stood up against DeVos.
Oh, was it Snow?
I thought it was
No, it wasn't
Murkowski.
Snow.
Murkowski, okay.
Yeah, like the two, and people made a big deal. It's like, oh, Republican women are so open now, you know, like they're the ones that we need to focus on, you know, as far as like building the coalitions and blah, blah, blah. But it was significant to me that the only person that those two came out with, it was a woman.
Yes, me too.
That was, like, women still kind of hate each other a little bit, you know?
Yes, that's patriarchy. I thought it would. I mean, Betsy DeVos is awful, but I mean,
Right.
Rex Tillerson, Ben Carson, like they're not great. I mean, it's
Right.
I mean, it's awful. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting as well that she was disqualifying. I mean, Rick Perry, come on, like he's no Department of Energy once. So it's like you're not gonna put up a fight for him. Like he's, you know, I feel like they're like the male and female version of each other as far as cabinet records, not positions. But no, I was glad that Elizabeth Warren read the letter. Of course, they stopped her. They didn't stop any of the men, but I was glad that she read the letter. I thought it was really awesome, and I thought it was very, very American. That like a Black woman's words were, you know, kind of like the last fight in between Jeff Sessions and being Attorney General.
Mm-hmm. And then ultimately entered by 3 white men on the floor.
Yes.
The next day. But I do think they put Warren in a good position, you know, like I think is Warren the one who could possibly bring the left together? I hypothesize that she might be able to, because I think those who feel the pain of, you know, the privileged white women who feel the most shafted by Hillary Clinton losing, I think, you know, they really want a woman at the top.
And Elizabeth Warren fights. I mean, part of the Consumer Protection Agency, like she's fought and she's been seen fighting, and you can't say that for every Democrat. So, yeah.
Wells Fargo, like, yeah, she doesn't hold her tongue. They will. I will say that a guy that I know who's really, really woke. He's a hetero Black male. He pointed out to me recently, it's like, well, she did remain very tacit on Dakota Access Pipeline, and that's true. She did. She didn't. She could have done more to recenter that when the media was silencing that and when Congress was silencing that. You know, like she could have done something more than what she did. But other than that, I see her as a fighter as well.
I do too. Yeah, I think that's why I was confused about the Ben Carson vote. Not that I am well versed on what HUD does, but it didn't seem to really match for me with her. But I'm also like, I think maybe I'm circling back around to being like, she's the best one, so like let's get behind it, let's go, like let's do it. Like I don't know how picky we can be, but isn't that sad though? I wonder if Trump being so bad going to set up the Democrats to do the bare minimum. And we're going to be like, it's great. Like, we're like, oh, they didn't vote for Jeff Sessions. They should have never voted for Jeff Sessions, ever. Like, even if there was like a President Romney or something, like, they should have never, so I hope we don't fall into the trap of giving them like all of these leftist points when they're just kind of doing what they should do anyway.
Yeah, well, I do see, when I'm looking at the left and the Democrats, and I'm seeing the major factions right now being the HRC, Feminists, and the Bernie Bros, basically. And I see Elizabeth Warren as the unification candidate. I think she appeals to both sides. Parker's agreeing with me.
Yeah, I think that Elizabeth Warren, she's progressive enough, but I think she knows how to get in there and compromise. And one thing that we're seeing now, I guess you got to be able to sort of dumb yourself down. You got to be able to go down to the Rust Belt states and make it known that you are not some East Coast liberal elitist, and that you feel the other people's pain. And I think that she brings that to the table, in a way that's comparable to Bernie.
I agree with that.
I think the one thing that is sad, though, is that when you look at the Democrats who have run, I mean, they all come from these backgrounds. Like, Hillary Clinton came from a working class background. Bill Clinton came from a working class background. Barack Obama, working class. Joe Biden, working class. Elizabeth Warren, working class. So it's not even that you have to dumb yourself down. This is their lived experience, but for some reason, they're being rebranded as like out of touch.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's exactly right. And what
I do know, though, that like, Hillary Clinton, she's got her Wall Street connections, but at the end of the day, like, come on, she's not like this
Monster.
She's not a monster, and she doesn't come from this legacy of wealth.
Right. Well, yeah, that's it. And so the questions are like, what are the locus of selling out? Like, at what point do you lose yourself in that process? And then what is this game whereby like we continue to see and Donald Trump played it really well, because he actually does come from affluence. He actually does come from, like, let's say the top 10% or the top 1% as his background. So how was he able to project a caricature of a person who could appeal to that rhetoric?
I think it's easier
dumbfounding
to do. I feel like it's easier for him as a man. Like, he still has this like,
because he doesn't.
He still has this like tough, or people still assume this like toughness, and maybe that's rooted in his masculinity that they wouldn't assume for Hillary. But I'm not really sure. He's from a family that, I mean, his dad made himself, but dad also was a super racist, was arrested at a Klan rally, and like was, you said about Omarosa talking about the ghetto and like her brother being killed by gang members. Like, his dad is one of the beneficiaries of the architecture of these cities being the way that they are. So, I don't know how he really got away with it, but I just feel like that, like, being a smart, rich businessman is just more acceptable than being a wealthy woman, or being a woman who has made her wealth and is friends with the bank. He's the point in all these Goldman Sachs.
Well, so much.
He's the point in all those Goldman Sachs people anyway.
Right. Yeah. So much for trying to end on a good note, but I guess
I do want to say that I heard that there's going to be a like an immigrant strike. I don't know if that's supposed to be tomorrow, but they're supposed to be sort of like walking out tomorrow or Friday. And I hope that actually happens, so that, people can see what happens when immigrants don't show up to work. Like, I hope they can shut shit down and make a.
Well, the group, I think I joined the Facebook group or the Facebook event on that. Like really what they were wanting is for people to stand in solidarity and say like, nobody go to work, you know?
I'm down for that.
I think that's
Yeah,
the protest.
Brittany, will you repeat that? Because I wasn't, I didn't hear it.
Oh yeah, I think that's the protest that my husband was talking about people standing in solidarity and not going to work, and just then showing, like standing in solidarity with immigrants and showing what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to need more. Yeah, the one thing I'll add to the whole protest thing is that's what we're going to need more of. We're going to need more of things that actually make economic impacts, like things that can actually frustrate the mechanisms and the processes of power and of political power. And that's a really important point. Like, you know, it's not just about making a stand and getting your feelings out there. You know what I'm saying? It's also about like strategic, substantive, disruptive, nonviolent resistance. So I like we're going on 3 hours, so I guess we should kind of wrap it up or whatever. But does anyone have any final words? Maybe Parker, like the voice of the future. Anything you want to end on?
Well, I'll just say, you know, it must have been 2 weekends ago, whenever the Muslim ban was passed. There was a protest down at VCU. And I just went by myself thinking I'd be by my lonesome. And I just ran into so many of my friends who couldn't even vote in this election, but were just disgusted by what they saw. So I hate to, you know, quote Martin Luther King, because I think so often he sort of used to silence people when they're feeling upset. But, you know, the arc of justice does, it's a long one, but it leans towards us.
Well, that's the positive note that I wanted to end on. So let's call it a wrap.
Can I just say one thing? I do want to let you guys know that Angela Davis is going to be in Richmond next Friday.
Yeah.
Oh my God. How do I get a ticket?
At the VMFA. So I know that they're now doing tickets for the overflow. So they're $15. And if you go on the Africana Independent Film Festival Facebook page, you can find out how to buy tickets.
That's another positive note. I love it. I love her.
Yes.
Well, thank you, ladies. This has been fantastic. We'll have to do it again. Let's not wait till Black History Month to do it again. Let's go ahead and continue these dialogues throughout the year and find more and more ways to continue to lift every voice, as we said before we started the live broadcast. Thank you so much, and I guess we'll see each other on the internets. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Take care.